South Park. If you haven't seen it, you've at least heard of it. I mean, I'd hope so at least. It's one of the most popular shows of all time and my personal favorite. At the time of writing this, South Park has 328 episodes and a handful of Paramount exclusives, and while I could sit down and rank each individual episode against one another, that's for another video that'll get put out whenever I finally finish that. For now though, I thought it'd be fun to sit down and check out the best and worst episodes from each season, at least according to IMDB. From there, I'm going to pick out my personal favorite and least favorite episodes from each season because this is my channel and I'll do what I want. Suck it. Starting with Season 1, we have Episode 13 and the season finale. Cartman's mom is a dirty slut, with an IMDb score of 8.6 out of 10, and for good reason. The episode centers around Eric's quest to find out who his father is. This all stems from the fact that Eric's dad isn't in the picture, so he has no one to celebrate Father's Sunday with. Oh, did I say quest? Well, it's more like a giant laundry list of names that Eric's mom has slept with. It goes something like this. Eric's mom says it's a Native American named Chief Running Water. Chief Running Water tells Eric that his mother is referred to as
Bear with Wide Canyon,
and directs him to see Chef. Chef says that Eric's mother preferred Mr. Garrison over him, but Mr. Garrison proclaims that literally everyone at the 12th annual Drunken Bar Dance has slept with her. This leads Eric to seek out Mephisto, that weird DNA dude who lives in the mountains, for DNA testing. The episode is left on a cliffhanger with all of the potential fathers, including the entire 1991 Denver Broncos roster, gathering around for the test results, before the narrator tells everyone that the answer is coming in 4 weeks. Spoiler alert, the father is actually his mom, who's a hermaphrodite. Early South Park was so chaotic, I swear. The worst episode of Season 1 is Episode 5's An Elephant Makes Love to a Pig, with an IMDb score of a 7.4, and oh boy is it something. It starts off in peak Cartman fashion with this absolute banger of a one-liner.
You get your bitch ass back in the kitchen and make me some pie!
The gang's waiting at the bus stop when the camera shifts and you see Kyle holding onto a fucking elephant. I mean, come on guys, it's in the title of the episode. But yeah, Kyle's got a pet elephant for some reason. Got it by mail order from Africa and everything. Oh, and Cartman's got a pot-bellied pig, because fuck it, why not? Matt and Trey must have been messing around with these reveal shots because there's another one right after that made me choke on my coffee. The bus pulls up, but Miss Crabtree won't let the elephant on because it's, quote, the new retarded girl. Because of this, the elephant has to ride the short bus, which is where the pan shot comes in. Listen, I get it's not a joke for everyone, and by today's standards, it's incredibly offensive, but good God did it make me laugh when I first saw it, because we've all been there. We were all in elementary school and middle school once, we all saw the short bus, we all had our little friend groups, and I guarantee you every single one of us has made a joke saying their friend belongs on the short bus. And for any of you grandstanders out there, you're the person. Anyway, after learning about crossbreeding in school, Kyle wants to breed his elephant with Cartman's pig to make pot-bellied elephants, which leads them to Dr. Mephisto's genetic engineering ranch. He's doing work that'll change the world for the better, with 4-assed monkeys, 4-assed ostriches, and a 4-assed mongoose. This guy's killing it. Unfortunately for the boys, the pig and elephant DNA won't splice, leading them to seek out Chef, who gives them an idea to help the animals make sweet, sweet love. Back at the ranch, Mephisto is able to use some of Stan's DNA from a blood sample, which he uses to make a Stan clone. There's this hilarious part where the kids try to get the animals drunk and Elton John just appears and starts singing to help set the mood. It's so over the top and stupid. Anyway, the Stan clone ends up escaping from the engineering ranch and starts terrorizing the town of Southpark before Mephisto saves the day by shooting it. At the science fair, Cartman's pig gives birth to a pot-bellied pig that looks like Mr. Garrison, implying that Mr. Garrison was clapping some bacon cheeks. This is definitely one of the more unhinged episodes in the entire series, and it feels out of place with the rest of not just the season, but the show as a whole, and it looks like the audience generally agreed with that. Coincidentally, this is also my least favorite episode of the season as well. Onto my personal favorite though, Episode 2, Volcano. Volcano was the first episode of South Park that I ever watched as a kid. I remember flipping through channels one day, eventually ending on South Park thinking it was another Nickelodeon show, only for my world to implode. The episode starts out with the boys going hunting with Stan's Uncle Jimbo and his friend Ned, who talks using a shitty voice box that makes him sound like an off-brand text-to-speech drone. The initial few minutes seem pretty tame, until the group finds a Rocky Mountain black bear, which leads to what I think is one of the funniest scenes in the episode.
My God, it's coming right for us!
When I say this is something that's lived with me my entire life, I'm not kidding. I still laugh every time I watch it. My friends and I still say it when we play games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. Hell, even the NYPD adopted it as their slogan. This entire moment is amplified when Jimbo sees a deer and calls for a 46 gauge, only to pull out a rocket launcher and yell, "It's coming right for us!" I can only imagine the death threats they received from PETA after this. Cartman also tells everyone he served in Vietnam, and he keeps that up the entire time. It's just peak South Park. If those shenanigans weren't enough for you, Volcano is also the episode that Randy Marsh is introduced. Believe it or not, kids, but before Tegrity Farms, Randy Marsh was just a background character, and actually one of the more logical people in South Park, working as a respected geologist. After discovering that Mount Evanson is about to erupt, we learn that the boys are camping on it. Most of the story here centers around Stan dealing with the fact that Jimbo seems to like hanging out with Kenny more than him. This all stems from the fact that Stan didn't want to shoot an animal at the beginning. Now, Randy serves as the hero of the episode, as he's the one who comes up with the idea to build a trench to save the town from lava. Well, kinda. The lava ends up taking out Denver, but who cares, the Broncos suck anyway. Kenny initially survives the eruption, but gets shot after Ned drops his gun at the end. Volcano is one of my favorite episodes of the season, and one I hold in high regard, even if it's incredibly stupid. And if you're already down in the comments shitting your pants over it, lick dicks, this is my opinion and I'm standing by it. Season 2's highest rated episode is Spooky Fish, coming in at an 8.4 out of 10. It's the Halloween special of the season, and oh my god do they come out swinging. For starters, they just keep rotating shots of Barbra Streisand on the screen at all times, for the entire episode. I wish I was joking. So what happens in it? Well, the episode opens up with an alternate reality Cartman with a goatee. This isn't the main plot though, it's just one of those things where there's a constant flip between the real Cartman and the fake Cartman throughout, and the boys can't figure it out until the end. The real story centers around Sharon getting a visit from Aunt Flo, who gives Stan a pet fish as a present. Stan thinks it's spooky, but Sharon, who's been taking ventriloquist classes, isn't buying it. Stan puts the fish in his room and everything seems fine at first, until Stan looks over and there's a whole ass body in the floor in his room. Sharon does the psychopathic thing and hides the body while telling Stan how good he is. This happens again and the entire process repeats itself. The next day, Officer Barbrady comes to take a look around the backyard, and Sharon fucking kidnaps him and locks him in the basement. Hands down, the best part of the episode for me is Chef's costume. It has nothing to do with the story, but just look at it. Okay, so the boys finally confront Aunt Flo, who tells them where she got the fish from. While the boys are trying to find out exactly where that location is, just pay attention in the background. The boys end up finding the shop where the owner tells them that it's just like all the other returns, only for the shot to pan out to reveal a bunch of demonic animals. It's here where you find out that the shop pulled a poltergeist and built the place on top of an Indian burial ground. There's even a door portal thing like the closet in the movie. Good times. It's a good episode, but to me, I was a little shocked to see it at an 8.4 considering some of the other episodes of the season. The worst episode of Season 2, and the entire series so far, is Terrence and Phillip in Not Without My Anus, coming in at a measly 6.2 out of 10. This score is a little misleading, but also fairly accurate. See, this is the first episode of Season 2, and South Park fans were expecting the follow-up of the Season 1 finale, Cartman's Mom is a Dirty Slut, but instead, they were blessed with a full-length Terrence and Phillip episode in its place, forcing them to wait an extra week before finding out who Cartman's dad really was. It's worth noting that this was an intentional joke and the episode was released on April Fool's Day, but it was still a whole fiasco when it first released, and this is one of the lowest rated episodes in the entire series. I don't feel like I need to give a full breakdown because I don't think this is anyone's personal favorite episode, but I'll give a quick TLDR. Terrence's daughter is kidnapped in Iran, but the duo find her in Iraq. When they get home, they find out that this was all a big plan formulated by their arch nemesis, Scott. This guy. Which culminates with Saddam Hussein invading Canada. This all leads to Terrence and Phillip using chemical warfare via farts to kill Saddam Hussein. I wish I was kidding. But that's the charm of Terrence and Phillip, if you want to call it something. But yeah, understandably, the dumbest episode of the season, and not really something I would even consider to be part of Season 2. Episode 4's Chicken Lover comes in at an 8 out of 10 on IMDB and is a big Cartman episode. I mean, most of South Park in general are Cartman episodes, but this is the big one where he drops the famous line.
Respect my
Outside of that, this episode is a bit difficult to talk about without the entire video getting demonetized, which is a chore in and of itself. So I gotta kind of beat around the bush a bit here. There's a big crime scandal in Southpark. Something is, choking the chickens, if you catch my drift. Someone's doing that thing where if Chris Hansen walked in, they'd be asked to take a seat. Got it? Alright, sweet. Well, whoever was doing it left a note at the scene, but there's only one problem.
Alright, I can't read!
To address the Barbrady predicament, the mayor sends Barbrady back to elementary school to learn how to read, causing Barbrady to enlist Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Fat Ass to help figure out who's doing this. And as everyone was expecting, Cartman takes it a bit too far.
Sir, step out of the car, please.
All units.
With the boys' help, Barbrady learns to read and they're able to catch the chicken choker, who's just the librarian dude at the beginning of the episode. It's all a bit strange, but a good episode nonetheless. Not counting the Terrence and Phillip episode, my least favorite of the season is episode 7, City on the Edge of Forever. While on their way to school, the psychotic bus driver detours the bus off a cliff, into a river, then off that river, past some tourists, and onto the edge of another cliff. Most of the early portion of the episode is just them teetering off the edge of this cliff, and it's all centered around Miss Crabtree yelling and threatening to kill a bunny. She ends up leaving to go find help with all the children trapped on the bus. But with nothing to do but wait, the gang starts reliving flashbacks from season 1. Now while all that's going on, you get to follow everyone's favorite character, Miss Crabtree, as she travels around Southpark just screeching at anyone she finds in an attempt to get some help. Eventually, the bus just falls directly into a giant tub of ice cream, only for it all to be some dreamception bullshit where it's like Stan's dream of Cartman's dream. It's all really strange, but yeah, that's the episode. Season 3, Episode 11, Chinpokemon, is the highest rated episode of Season 3, hitting an 8.7 out of 10 on IMDB. The entire plot is basically, what if we took Pokemon and slapped it in South Park? And holy shit, does it work. I want to set the record straight. I love everything about this episode. It's not my favorite of the season, but it's definitely number 2. There's a new Japanese game in South Park, and Cartman is exactly what every kid was like when we all heard about Game Boy Colors and the wonders of collecting Pokemon on them. Even Kyle's on board with it and buys one, though he's late to the party and doesn't really understand the hype for them. There's only one downside with the Chinpokemon. They're trying to brainwash kids into bombing Pearl Harbor. No, like, there's a moment in the video game Stan, Cartman, and Kenny are playing where they have to literally try and bomb Pearl Harbor. Good times. It's like War Thunder before the leaks. As the episode goes on, the characters slowly transition to be more anime-like with their faces and talking habits. At one point, just full-on speaking Japanese in the classroom. All of this culminates with the children being turned into Japanese pilots, tasked with, you guessed it, bombing Pearl Harbor, before their parents figure out what's going on and foil the plot by simply pretending to show an interest in Chinpokemon, immediately making it the lamest thing in the world to all of the kids. Just a great episode, and one that I could watch over and over again without ever getting tired of it. Much like Season 1's worst rated episode, Jackophsaurus is my least favorite on Season 3, as well as being the lowest ranked episode. I promise this only lines up a few more times, but I don't think this one was much of a shocker. It's one of the lowest rated episodes in the entire series, coming in at a 6.4 out of 10, just barely beating out Season 2's Terrence and Phillip stinker. Okay, so the boys are camping out in the mountains. After writing America's next big hit single, Cartman wanders off to take a shit and ends up discovering a Jackophosaur. These things are so goddamn annoying. I also don't think I can show it because it's naked and has tits, so if it's blurred, that's why. Anyway, they're thought to be extinct, so now that they found one, a bunch of scientists get to work trying to breed the species so it can recover. Much like the viewers, all the townsfolk find these things incredibly annoying because, well, I mean, do I have to play another clip?
Lisa needs a jack-off.
To get rid of these things, the town stages a game show which is fixed to help the Jackophosaurs win so that they can win a trip to France. And that's it. This is my least favorite episode of the season as well, since it's just annoying. The funniest moment of the episode for me is right at the beginning when Cartman is singing and playing the harmonica. Everything after that is just downhill. Outside of whatever that was, Season 3 is really solid. It was a lot tougher to pick a favorite than I was expecting it to be. There's so many good episodes in this season, and I was pretty torn between the likes of Sexual Harassment Panda, Two Guys Naked in a Hot Tub, or even Jin Pokemon. But I had to go with episode 3, Succubus. For those of you who know the episode, I think you already know why, but for those of you who don't, allow me to explain. The boys show up at school one day to find out that Chef has quit after falling in love with some broad named Veronica. Mr. Garrison thinks she's a succubus, which is just a demon that sucks the life force out of you, if you know what I mean. Long story short, that's exactly what she is, and the gang figures out if they sing a song in reverse, they can kill the succubus, and Kenny in the process. But it's not the story that makes the episode my favorite. And it's not Mr. Derp, or the fact that Cartman gets bullied by the optometrist, and spends most of the episode with his pupils fully dilated. It's entirely because of Chef's family. They're easily the best characters of the episode. They refer to the boys as young crackers, and the dad just tells the story of the Loch Ness Monster the entire time, with one of the more memorable lines of the early seasons found here.
Instead, I need about 350.
It's been like 25 years since this episode originally aired, and me and my friends still, to this day, still say this shit to each other all the time. This also begs the question, is that really the main reason that this is your favorite episode of Season 3 over the other ones you listed earlier?
You're goddamn right.
The best episode of Season 4 is Episode 5. Cartman joins Nambla with a 9.0 rating. Cartman feels like he's simply too good for his current friend group and heads out to find a new one. Thinking he needs a more mature friend group, he decides to look for them on the internet. The second best place to look, right behind the Catholic Church Altar Boy School, I guess. Well, as you can probably figure out, he gets spammed with a ton of Jared Fogels after joining the Men Who Like Young Boys chat room. Things are looking pretty good for Cartman though. He gets to meet some new friends, they buy him a bunch of cool shit like the Kama Sutra, but the only downside is that they keep getting taken away by the FBI whenever he goes out to meet them. That's where Nambla enters the picture. Who are they? Well, the North American Man-Boy Love Association. Duh. Cartman, who's loving all the attention Nambla gives him, accepts the offer to become the poster child for the organization. Oh, and while all this is going on, Kenny's parents find out they're pregnant again, and Kyle and Stan pass the time by making faces at a bunch of dialysis patients. After an FBI sting operation goes wrong, shocker, we learn that there's another Nambla in Southpark, the North American Marlon Brando lookalikes. So what's going on with the Cartman Nambla? Well, there's a little Scooby-Doo style chase scene here where the FBI is running through all the doors looking for the Nambla members, only to catch the wrong Nambla group again. It's just that wacky charm, but, you know, with a group of Jared Fogels instead of someone committing tax fraud. There's a pretty good moment at the end here as well where you think they're gonna let the Nambla guys go, only for Kyle to say exactly what everyone is thinking.
Dude, you have sex with children.
Time for the worst episode on the list, and most people's least favorite episode in the entire series, mine included. Season 4's episode 14, Pip. It's got a 6.6 on IMDB, and it might as well just be a 4. The entire episode explores Pip's background, which is just Great Expectations. You know, that Charles Dickens novel? Yeah, well, it sucks. It's not really funny at all, there's no good moments in it, and none of the main characters even make an appearance. Pip is an orphan, much like in the book, who's sent to a boarding school to be raised as a gentleman. When he returns home, the lady that sent him away wants him to fall in love so the princess child chick can break his heart. I don't know, it's really dumb. No one likes this episode. Can we skip it? Awesome. Moving on to my personal favorite episode of the season, we have Probably. It's the second half of a two-part story where Chris and Saddam Hussein are fighting for Satan's love and affection. What a weird sentence. Anyway, while that's going on, Cartman has started his own church and it's beginning to grow. Just seeing Cartman as a preacher is fucking hilarious to me. And then you have Cartman's mom trying to get him to stop, and it's just the weakest attempt. The children end up building a new church while Cartman starts getting calls from Kenny, who seemingly died in the last episode, but is actually just in Mexico, which, I mean, same thing, right? Cartman ends up using that to keep scaring the kids, which is also just so damn funny. Then he starts to proclaim that he can heal people, but it's just him slapping the shit out of the kids who need help with something, and it turns into one of those Southern Baptist churches where the preacher gets the Spirit of God in him and gets Parkinson's for a few minutes while everyone dances and screams amen. It's good stuff. While that's going on, Satan visits God in heaven, which is apparently just for the Mormons. Alright, back to Cartman. He's rich now. Turns out if you yell and run around in the confidence of a decorative building, people will chuck money at you, and it's all tax-free. To overthrow Cartman, they bring in Jesus, who just tells the kids to go back to school and have fun. With the kids gone, Jesus teaches Cartman a lesson by sending him someplace worse than hell. Satan ends up breaking up with both Saddam and Chris before sending Saddam to heaven to be with the Mormons. It sounds wrong, but if you flip it, it's actually Saddam's worst nightmare and more of a personal hell for him than the actual place he was living in. Season 5 is the first time where I fully agree with the top-ranked and worst-ranked episodes of the season. For the best, you have Episode 4's Scott Tenorman Must Die, with a 9.6 out of 10 on IMDB. It's one of the highest rated episodes in the entire series, and it should come as no surprise. Matt Stone and Trey Parker even admitted in an interview that the only reason they made this episode was to show just how psychotic and truly evil Eric Cartman is as a character. Now, if you're watching this on a streaming service, or anything other than the DVD set, this is actually the third episode, as the original third episode was blocked from airing due to it showing a depiction of Muhammad. I'm pretty sure Johnny Two Cellos or Blooms has already made videos on this if you're curious about it, and I probably will at some point, but that's for another time. So why must Scott Tenorman die? Well, it all starts with Cartman bragging about his pubes to the boys. Only they're not his. They're Scott Tenorman's, who he bought them off of for $10. Now that may be gross, but don't worry, it gets so much worse. Cartman tries several ways to get his $10 back, such as showing up at Scott's house pretending to be an IRS agent with Scott's pubes just glued to his face. Anyway, Scott just kind of outplays Cartman at every angle here. Just watch this.
Just give me the $6, and then I'll give you the 20.
Okay.
Now, give me the pubes, and I'll give you back $2.
Right.
Now, give me the 12 cents, and I'll give you the rest of your change back. And then give me the 20, and I'll give you the pubes.
Sweet.
He even tricks Cartman and sends him all the way out to Fort Collins, forcing Cartman to ride 106 miles home in the back of a pickup truck. Cartman even pulls out the big guns and says they're gonna put his grandma down unless he gets his money back, and Scott makes him beg for the cash only to light the money on fire. So, to get him back, Cartman concocts a plan to train a pony to assault Scott, where you get a key piece of info about Mr. Jenkins.
Oh, well, does Mr. Jenkins know you're using his pony? He shoots trespassers on sight, you know.
Stan's Uncle Jimbo and his friend Ned help Cartman plot revenge on Scott by doing some reconnaissance with him, where you learn that Scott loves the band Radiohead. This is all actually just a ploy by Ned and Jimbo to get to see Scott's mom's tits, which coincidentally half of the town is also doing, which I thought was hilarious. But anyway, what does Cartman do with this information? Well, he voices over an interview with Radiohead to try and make Scott cry, only for Tenorman to best him yet again by showing a video of Cartman begging from earlier in the episode, which causes everyone to bust out laughing, killing Kenny in the process. He then lets it slip to Kyle that he's been training a pony at Mr. Jenkins' farm, who warns Scott about the plan, seemingly foiling it yet again. As that wraps up, Cartman invites Scott to his chili con carnival. Scott asks his parents to go get the pony to stop Eric's plan and flip it on him, before heading out to see his friends who are busy making a chili mixed with all of the pubes of every kid in town. Nice. When the two sit down for the cook-off, Scott tries to reveal it to Cartman, only for Cartman to be the one who calls it out, having switched his with Chef's right before the cook-off started. It's here that Cartman's full plan is revealed, and oh my god, is it some Silence of the Lambs level shit. He explains that he knew Stan and Kyle would betray him, and warns Scott about the trap. Remember how, a minute ago, we just learned that Mr. Jenkins was a psychopath who would shoot trespassers on sight? Well, it'd be a real shame if someone had sent their parents there in an attempt to steal the man's pony from his backyard, wouldn't it? Especially if someone else were to warn Mr. Jenkins of violent pony killers in the area, i.e. Scott's parents. Oh, don't worry, it gets worse. See, they're at the chili cook-off.
Do you like it? Do you like it, Scott? I call it Mr. and Mrs. Tenorman chili.
He literally fed the kid his own dead parents disguised as chili. As Scott's having a full-on breakdown, like you do, his favorite band Radiohead shows up and calls him a crybaby to his face before leaving. In one final act of true psychotic display, Cartman quite literally drinks Scott's tears. It's one of those rare episodes where every single second is perfectly used. Every word means something, there's no filler in the entire episode. Every moment where you think there's a setup, it's just a decoy for the twist at the end. Just a masterpiece of an episode. Here's a good rule of thumb. If there's a Terrence and Phillip focused episode in a season, it's gonna be one of, if not the lowest rated episodes in that set. And season 5 is no exception. Terrence and Phillip Behind the Blow is meh. Don't get me wrong, a meh for Southpark is still a 7 out of 10 on IMDB and better than most shows, but it just feels like a filler episode to me. It's a Southpark episode, so there's still laughs and funny moments, but for a season with multiple episodes above a 9.0 and most above an 8.5, this one definitely stands out. The plot is focused on the boys trying to get Terrence and Phillip back together after the duo has a falling out. I don't really have much to say on it though other than that. Terrence gets fat, which is kind of funny, but it's played out right away. There's a few other funny moments, but those all come from the B plot, which has to do with Southpark getting taken over by environmentalists who just use the children as free labor. They also just cut Kenny's arm off at one point to give the kids some convincing. To bring the duo back together, the boys do a Behind the Blow episode of TNP. And it's literally just 5 minutes of Terrence and Phillip history. That's right, 25% of the episode is this one mini show talking about the history of Terrence and Phillip. And it sucks. I mean, there's some references to past South Park episodes and the bigger, longer uncut movie, but that's not enough to get me to sit through 5 minutes of exposition of 2 background characters. Season 6 has some absolute bangers. You've got The Simpsons already did it, A Ladder to Heaven, Aspen, Bebe's Boobs Destroy Society, and the return of the Fellowship of the Ring to the Two Towers, which conveniently is the highest rated episode at a 9.3. The return of the Fellowship of the Ring to the Two Towers is a spoof of The Lord of the Rings, told in South Park format, which just works out so damn good. And they do a phenomenal job later on in the show with the Game of Thrones episodes, but we'll touch on that in a different part. The show kicks off with the boys playing Lord of the Rings while Stan's parents rent something for themselves. Randy sends the kids on a quest to return the Lord of the Rings movie to Butter's house, but when he puts in his and Sharon's movie, it's revealed that he royally fucked up and switched the movies in their cases, leaving him with a copy of Lord of the Rings while the boys are in possession of a porno. Since literally no one knows this, the parents give the movie to Butters, who watches it and turns into Gollum.
Butters, what the hell are you doing?
Soon, the 6th graders get involved, taking the tape from the boys to reveal that they've been carrying a copy of Backdoor Sluts 9 this whole time. There's a great scene here where Randy and Sharon tell the other parents, and the dads just start ranking off other pornos while the wives look at them all disappointed.
I mean, was it like Crotch Capers 3?
I'm afraid it was Backdoor Sluts 9. Backdoor Sluts 9?!
While the boys try to figure out a plan, the 6th grader recruits all of the others in town to try and steal the tape from the boys. The council decides that it'd be best to just return the movie to the Two Towers video store, forming the Fellowship of the Lord of the Rings. By this point, Token has also seen the film and quits playing, causing the parents to try to talk to him about it.
And when the woman has 4 penises in her at the same time, then stands over the men and pees on them, is that part of being in love too?
And then when Token's dad finds out what movie it was, his wife just gives him the same look. It's just so good. Alright, back to the boys. They're on their way to return the movie when they're ambushed by the 6th graders. Jimmy sacrifices himself as the stand-in Gandalf while the boys escape, only for it to completely fail because he's Jimmy. By some miracle, the boys are able to return the tape and their parents come to save the day just as they're about to get beat up by the 6th graders. If the episode ended here, it'd be great, but being South Park, there's always a way to one-up the scene. And in this case, it's done by the parents thinking the kids had all been watching Backdoor Sluts 9, and then just info-dumping all of these kinks onto the boys who haven't watched the tape. It's just golden. None of that can be played though, or I'll be deplatformed, so just use your imagination or go watch it for yourself. There's 2 episodes tied for the lowest ranking of the season. Fun with Veal and Freak Strike, both at a 7.9 out of 10. I'll do a quick rundown of both and save some time, but don't expect any breakdowns or anything like that, just a light overview, starting with Fun with Veal. Stan learns what veal is and becomes a vegetarian. He then coaxes his friends into stealing a bunch of calves and takes them hostage in his bedroom. The parents try to starve the boys out, but Eric's mom just keeps sneaking them snacks and supplies. This leads to an epic multi-day standoff between the boys and the parents, the police, and the FBI, all culminating with them attempting to flee the area with Mr. Worf as their getaway driver. Naturally, they're captured, but not before it's revealed that the veal market has gone dry, effectively saving the calves in the process. Alright, on to Freak Strike. I personally really like this episode, but apparently that's a hot take. The boys disguise Butters as a mutant to go on the Maury Povich show and try to win some shit, only for Butters to win a free round of mini golf. This causes Cartman to act like a psychotic child so he can get on the show, which is hilarious in and of itself. While that's going on, there's a bunch of freak shows who make a living by going on the talk show circuits. So they end up going on strike along with Butters, who they haven't realized is just faking everything. The strike ends up working, but Cartman, pissed that Butters just screwed him out of a prize, rips off his fake face balls, revealing the con to all of the other freaks. But these guys are idiots, and think Cartman literally ripped the balls off of Butters, so they just go after him instead, allowing Butters to get off scot-free. Until he's grounded by his parents. My personal favorite episode of Season 6 is Aspen. The whole gang, including parents, head out to Aspen for some skiing. There's only one catch here. The parents need to visit a timeshare presentation, leaving the boys to do some ski lessons on the bunny slope. This is where my favorite part comes in. It's another classic scene that me and my friends still repeat to this day. Hell, I even mention it on streams and videos over on the main channel from time to time. Just remember not to french fry when you're supposed to pizza, or you'll end up like Ike. Back to the timeshare plot though. It's your standard run-of-the-mill timeshare pitch. And if you've never been to one of these, you may think it's a bit over the top, but I can assure you that's exactly how these things go. And you can trust me on this because when my wife and I went to Jamaica last year, she accidentally signed us up for one, and we had to sit through this same goddamn pitch for like 3 hours straight, and then they hounded us about it every fucking day for the entire week. Quite literally ruined the trip for us. So never go to one of these. They're so stupid. They're just for old white people to pretend to flex to their kids on Facebook with. Alright, back to Aspen. Your standard skier gets jealous of Stan and challenges him to a ski-off, naming him Stan Darsh. The parents finally get a chance to go skiing, and even get to skip the line to use the exclusive timeshare lift, only for it to deliver them right into another building for another pitch. Alright, back to Stan. He's challenged again, so he hits up the instructor for a Rocky-styled sports training montage. During the big race, Tad, the man who challenged him, is kicking Stan's ass until he's distracted by some titties, which, I mean, I feel that. This causes Stan to win and allows Aspen to keep their youth center. The parents end up buying a timeshare to come to Aspen 2 weeks every year, but the boys just kind of feel like everyone else when it comes to skiing. My least favorite episode is number 5, the new Terrence and Phillip movie trailer. Remember how I just said that all of these are my least favorite episodes? Yeah, I wasn't kidding, except this one doesn't really have all that much T&P to feature. The premise is simple. There's a new trailer for the Terrence and Phillip movie premiering during an Russell Crowe fighting around the world episode, forcing the boys and the audience to have to sit through it. That's not the only issue they face though, as they have to keep bouncing around to different people's houses to try and catch the premiere.
Hurry, we can't miss the commercials.
First, Stan's sister Shelly kicks them out so she can watch Buffy. Then Cartman fucks up the TV by trying to fix the color scheme. They head to Kyle's house, but get kicked out so that Ike can keep watching his show. This leads them to Chef's house, but Chef has a new fancy sentient TV that comes to life and starts terrorizing the town for the rest of the episode. After this, they hit up the bar, the retirement home, Cartman's house that's being fumigated, and a homeless person's TV, before settling on Butter's house. The Russell Crowe show is what really ruins the episode for me. It's just annoying, and I get that's the point of the episode, but it just kind of feels like every funny moment is short-lived when you have to go back to this dude. Casa Bonita is another all-time classic. It's got a 9.2 on IMDB, and I think it's one of the more memorable episodes in the entire series. Kyle gets to invite 3 friends to go to Casa Bonita with him for his birthday. But he doesn't invite Cartman, because Eric's been an ass to him for ages, taking Butters instead. This causes Eric to craft a scheme where he effectively kidnaps Butters by convincing him he's in the beginning of Fallout 4, and having him hide in the nearby Doomsday Bunker. Obviously, he doesn't tell anyone about this, so Butters doesn't show, and Kyle invites Cartman instead. Though that's short-lived, as Butters' parents think he's missing, which leads to Kyle postponing the Casa Bonita trip to help search for him. To prevent anyone from finding Butters, Cartman moves him from the bunker to a garbage dump, where he tells Butters he needs to rebuild society to keep him occupied. He also tells him that the world is infested with cannibals to prevent him from leaving the dump. This actually works at first, and Cartman gets to go to Casa Bonita with the gang, until Butters is found by Irene. The police contact Kyle's mom, who calls out Eric, but it's too late, and Eric sprints into Casa Bonita, eating some of the food, visiting Black Bart's cave, and diving off a waterfall. There's 2 episodes tied for the lowest ranking, those being episodes 15, Christmas in Canada, and episode 7, Red Man's Greed. Personally, I like Red Man's Greed more than Christmas in Canada, and since that's also my least favorite, we're gonna go through that one instead. It's Christmas, and Ike's birth parents show up to take him back to Canada with them. If you didn't know, Ike's adopted. I'd say spoiler alert, but this episode aired over 20 years ago, so suck it up. Also, he's Canadian. You should have been able to tell just by looking at him. Anyway, the boys go on this epic Wizard of Oz journey to bring him back home, just in time for Christmas, with Cartman threatening to kick Kyle's ass if they're not back in time to open up presents from Santa. Eventually, the boys manage to get Ike back after uncovering the truth that the Prime Minister is actually just Saddam Hussein trying to take over Canada yet again. There is one absolutely fucking hilarious part in this episode though, right at the end where it's officially Christmas, and since the boys aren't back home, Cartman threatens to beat up Kyle, only for Kyle to just lightly tap Eric, causing him to scream and cry for his mom.
Come on! Come on!
I really struggled with picking one for this because just like season 6, it's got some amazing episodes. You've got Raisins, Little Crime Stoppers, Christian Hard Rock, All About Mormons, and Fat Butt and Pancake Head. But ultimately, I settled on Grey Dawn. Mainly because I can't stand old people, and this episode is all about old people stereotypes and them taking over Southpark. There's also a moment in here that I'll always remember over most other episodes. The old people in Southpark are out of control, and much like the rest of the world, they can't drive. They keep running over people while on their way to Golden Corral. This leads to an old people meeting where they form a plan to stop the town from taking away their licenses. While the rest of the town slowly realizes what's going on, it's too late, and all the old people leave at the same time, running over and killing dozens of people. So this is the scene where I'm talking about. The boys are playing street hockey, and you just see Randy in the distance running towards them and trying to warn them. I don't know why, but it's so fucking funny to me. And then Cartman sees it and just goes,
Looks like Stan's dad's been hitting the bottle again.
and it's just the funniest thing to me. The outcome of this is that old people all get their licenses taken away. To retaliate, the AARP invades Southpark, just like Red Dawn. Who are the AARP? Well, the American Association of Retired Persons. They quickly take over the town and force all of the parents into internment camps while the boys manage to escape. This is where Cartman comes up with a plan to destroy their food supply, the Golden Corral. To everyone's disbelief, it actually works, and the National Guard are able to come in and round up all the old people starving to death as the Golden Corral isn't open right when they wake up. It's all around a really stupid episode, but it's full of funny moments like a grandma firing a rocket launcher at the National Guard and other dumb shit like that. Going into season 8, South Park really hits its stride here. There's 3 top-rated episodes this season, and up until this point, none of the previous 7 had more than 1. There is one that stands out above the rest though. The top-rated episode of season 8 is episode 5, Awesome-O, where Cartman pretends to be Butters' robot friend. It's a fantastic episode and one of the highest rated in the entire show's catalog, matching Casa Bonita from last season. The whole premise of the episode is that Cartman's trying to find the hidden dirt Butters has on him, being Cartman impersonating Britney Spears in his backyard and making out with a cutout of Justin Timberlake. There's some wacky shit going on where he becomes a comedy movie idea dispenser, where he just pumps out a ton of Adam Sandler movies before being kidnapped by the US Army, which is pretty funny. After being captured, Eric accidentally blows his cover by farting, which leads to Butters exposing him to the entire 4th grade class, meaning Eric just spent days torturing himself for nothing. It's another one of those episodes where Butters ends up on top over Eric. The worst episode of the season is, funny enough, episode 4, You Got F'd in the A. Remember a minute ago how I just said that season 8 is where South Park really hits its stride? Well, you can see that perfectly in the IMDB scores. This is the first season where all episodes are above an 8.0, with the worst of the season receiving a score of 8.1. almost 2 full points higher than some of the lower episodes in the early seasons. This is all following the big dance craze of the time like Stomp the Yard, and opens with Stan getting served by a dance crew. Randy teaches him how to retaliate, which is just southern line dancing, and the next time the crew comes over, Stan serves them back, which means it's on.
So now, I guess, it's on.
Stan needs to gather a crew for the big dance battle, so he recruits a goth, some dude shredding at Dance Dance Revolution, and a chick from Raisins. They try to recruit Butters as well because he's the best tap dancer in Colorado, but Butters is still suffering from PTSD on account of his dancing literally killing people at a contest. While all that's going on, Randy gets served and ends up in a hospital. In place of Butters, the crew recruits a dancing duck named Jeffy. On the day of the big serve-off, Jeffy sprains his ankle and can't compete. As the gang's about to forfeit, Butters comes in to save the day by accidentally launching his shoe into a stage light, killing all of the other kids. Alright, for the sake of the show, we all just need to agree that this is objectively a fantastic episode. Up the Down Steroid is about the Special Olympics. More specifically, about Jimmy doing PEDs in the Special Olympics and Eric pretending to be disabled so he can compete in the Special Olympics. And regardless of what you think of the word retarded, just set that aside for a few minutes and remember this aired over 20 years ago. The Special Olympics is coming to Denver, and Jimmy and Timmy are set to compete in it. Jimmy's approached by Nathan, who sells him PEDs to help with his training regimen. While that's going on, Cartman comes up with his quote, best idea ever, after learning that the grand prize for winning the Special Olympics is $1,000.
And a cash prize of $1,000.
The boys all condone it, but Cartman goes forward with the plan anyway. There's a whole montage of him researching how to appear handicapped, riding the short bus, practicing his facial expressions, and figuring out the perfect outfit. Guys, the first time I saw this, I'm pretty sure I pissed myself. It's just so far out of left field, and he just comes waddling up like, good God, man. Okay, so while Cartman's busy doing that, Timmy finds out that Jimmy has been doping. He doesn't tell anyone, but his Timmys are a little less Timmy and a little more Timmy, if you know what I mean. This leads to what was quite possibly the best part of the episode. Eric gets his mom to sign him up, but they're so ignorant that they don't know what to even lie about, so she just says,
He's retarded.
And look at the stupid fucking face he makes, dude. Okay, so the lady is like, no, what's his specific condition? And she just goes, oh, I'm not sure, sweetie, what's your condition? And Eric just says,
How should I know? I'm retarded.
listen, I've seen this episode hundreds of times. I still bust out laughing at that part every time. Every single time. Not a single time have I not laughed. I had to stop and rewind this like 3 times while recording so that I could stop laughing and get the voiceover to not sound like I was having a fucking aneurysm. Alright, so Eric's all signed up and it's time for the big day. Jimmy is busy dominating the Special Olympics, setting all kinds of records and blowing everyone away, while Eric, on the other hand, loses every single event, coming in dead last. At the closing ceremony, they bring out all these famous athletes who did PEDs, like Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire, which is just hilarious. Eric ends up winning a $50 gift card to Shakey's for coming in dead last, but Jimmy calls him out for faking to try to get into the Special Olympics. Timmy then points out how Jimmy was lying the whole time, and he goes on to call people who cheat like that, which is made even better by the fact that the camera is just showing close-ups of all the baseball players up there to present the award who were busted for using PEDs. This is a controversial one, I know. Good Times with Weapons has a 9.1 on IMDB, and I feel like a lot of people really enjoyed this episode, but for whatever reason it just didn't gel with me. I think it's the partial anime art style or the fact that Butters spends most of the episode just bleeding out of his eye, and it's genuinely a bit pitiful. So the boys are at the county fair when they find a Weapons of Asia store and trick the sellers into letting them buy a ton of martial arts weapons. With their newfound toys, the boys set out to protect the world. And by that, I mean they show off their weapons to Butters, who reprises his role as Professor Chaos. When he confronts the boys again, Kenny just chucks a ninja star at him, which gets impaled in Butters' face. To avoid having to tell their parents, they dress him up like a feral dog by gluing fur and socks to him, only to immediately get distracted by fighting Craig's rival ninja gang.
Kyle, just humor them. Yeah, yeah.
Butters then takes himself to the hospital, only for them to actually mistake him for a dog. He's then sent to an animal shelter, where he's peed on by another dog. But as it turns out, they're not there to help the animals, just euthanize them. Butters ends up escaping and collapsing in front of all of the parents. Now, thinking on his feet, Kyle blames the fact that Eric practically streaked in front of everyone for his distress, which caused them to lash out at Butters, and most everyone gets off scot-free. It's a pretty abrupt ending, and only Eric really gets punished, which is kinda lame. Like I said, I know this is a beloved episode, but it's just not for me. I honestly think this is one of the only ones I really disagree with, though. It's certainly the highest ranking one to end up on the bottom for me, which feels a bit weird.
We'll kick things off with Season 9's 12th episode, Trapped in the Closet, which has a 9.1 out of 10 on IMDB. It's also listed as a top-rated episode, meaning it's one of the most beloved episodes in the entire series. This episode is basically just Matt Stone and Trey Parker going to war with Scientology, which was a big deal, especially at the time. Stan gets told he's depressed by Scientologists, in an effort to convince him to find happiness in Scientology. I love how all the Scientologists are so over-the-top, polite, and happy too. It really sells the cult vibe that they've got going for them. Also, how whenever Stan asks a reasonable question, like why they're called the Church of Scientology, they just dodge it and bring up the Denver Broncos. So Stan ends up going back to the HQ and taking a spin on the E-meter, where he scores a crazy high Phaeton score, whatever the f that is, which causes all the Scientologists to believe that Stan is the reincarnated version of L. Ron Hubbard. This turns Stan into an overnight Scientologist super celebrity, with crowds waiting for him outside of his house. While Randy and Sharon try to figure out what to do, Stan heads up to his room where Tom Cruise is waiting for him. Tom Cruise begs for L. Ron Hubbard's approval, which causes Stan to say,
Well, I mean, you're not like as good as Leonardo DiCaprio, but you're okay, I guess.
This obviously upsets Tom Cruise, which leads to one of the more famous moments in the show's history, where Tom Cruise locks himself in Stan's closet. In an attempt to understand why Tom Cruise is in the closet, the news team brings on R. Kelly for an interview. Listen, kids, we know he's a horrible person now, but like 15 years ago, this man created one of the most beautiful forms of art in internet history. The Trap in the Closet story. I don't even know what you want to call it, a show series, a documentary, it doesn't have an identity. What it is 33 chapters of what the f*** that no one can escape from. And if you haven't heard of it, stop what you're doing and go watch the first 5 chapters. It's like trying blue Gatorade for the first time. It'll change your life. I'm getting sidetracked though. So Stan, now being the leader of Scientology, starts to make changes for the betterment of the people. For example, he makes it so that Scientologists don't need to pay money to belong to the religion. This blows the whole operation wide open, as it's revealed that the leaders of the org don't believe in any of this crap, and we're just using Stan as a way to make millions off of people stupid enough to believe that Stan was the second coming of L. Ron Hubbard.
Having them pay you for it, stupid!
At this point, John Travolta had joined Tom Cruise in the closet, so the police send in R. Kelly to get them out, who subsequently joins them in the closet.
Now I'm in the closet. Now I'm in the closet too.
The end of the episode is very meta, which is the point. Stan comes out and says, hey, these guys are lying to you to make money, and the leaders have a full-on meltdown threatening to sue and painting Stan as the bad guy. Much like in the show, this is how the actual religion reacts to large-scale criticism, and it's the main reason why all of the names in the credits were changed to John and Jane Smith. Can't sue someone if you don't know the names of the people responsible for making that episode. Following up the best episode of the season, we have the worst. Episode 3, Wing. The premise of the episode is simple. The boys want to get rich by doing as little work as possible, don't we all? So they decide to start a talent agency. It starts off simple enough. Their friend Token wins the Colorado Child Star contest. Because of this, he's chosen to sing at the Miss Colorado pageant in Denver, receiving $200 as payment. The boys dive all over this and launch the super awesome talent agency, where they bring Token in and get him to agree to a deal of 10% of all earnings going to the agency. One of my favorite aspects of South Park, and what I think is really true for a lot of people, is that it's all told through the perspective of like 4th grade boys who know absolutely nothing about how anything works. So they build out this whole talent agency to try to impress their friends by having a fountain in the middle of the room and talking to their hotshot clients.
Oh, how are you, Abraham Lincoln?
But for me, that's kind of where the episode ends in terms of being funny. Token ends up singing and attracts the attention of an actual talent agency who steals him away from the boys. Luckily though, a familiar face needs representation for his wife, Wing. The gang takes Wing to Los Angeles for a show. There's a funny moment here where Lou Kim sounds all sweet and asks if he can talk to his wife, only to scream at her over the phone before hanging up. Just a classic South Park bit. So what's really going on here? Well, Lou Kim is in deep with the Chinese mafia. They smuggled Wing into America in exchange for $10,000, which has yet to be paid. While they hunt her down, Wing's fighting for her life against Sylvester Stallone's prodigy, because why the hell not? Well, she ends up getting kidnapped by the Chinese mafia, forcing the boys to attempt to rescue her, leading to a giant shootout in a mansion. Don't worry, Kenny dies. After a standoff, there's a whole over-the-top speech from Stan about controlling a person's life and how Wing doesn't belong to anyone. It's one of those episodes. It's not horrible, but you can definitely tell why it's at the bottom for Season 9. On to my favorite episode of the season. Episode 5's The Losing Edge. To me, this is one of the best South Park episodes of all time. It's got everything you'd want. It's got the boys, a Randy B-plot, stupid jokes, and most importantly, it shits on baseball. This episode has some of the best memes in the entire series, so let's get into it. It's summer, and what better way to enjoy that time than by being forced to play a sport you hate so your parents can watch. The parents are having the time of their lives. The kids? Not so much. They all just want to finish the season so they can go home and play with their friends. Honestly, I feel this on a personal level. Growing up, I was a multi-sport athlete. Anything from football to basketball to track, cross-country, and yes, baseball. And there is nothing I hated more than waking up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday to go stand out in the field for 3 hours, hit one ball, take a pitch to a kneecap, and pretend to be excited when we won 2-0. Anyway, this episode lays out exactly what it's gonna be within the first 90 seconds. The parents love watching, the kids hate playing, and Randy gets drunk and beats the brakes off some redneck dad in the stands. After the game, the boys are all having a blast and cheering, only to find out they're going to the finals and competing in the postseason. While they freak out, you get this scene of Randy being arrested that I repeat, and I'm not kidding, at least 2 to 3 times a week.
I thought this was America. Huh? Isn't this America? I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
I shit you not, it's actually still my text notification sound on my phone. Just one of those instant classic lines. Anyway, the kids are panicking and come up with a plan to try and throw their games, only to find out that literally all of the other teams also are trying to lose. So the entire postseason turns into the opposite of its intention, where all of the teams are trying their hardest to lose, but no one even notices because it's baseball. While this is going on, Randy gets in the best shape of his life, fighting pissed off dads at every game until coming across the one, the only, the Bat Dad. After an entire postseason run of failing to lose, the kids recruit Kyle's cousin, Kyle, to help them lose since he sucks at sports. It looks like it's working out at first, until you get a little score montage showing South Park blowing out Denver by like 20 points. If they win this game, they'll end up having to dedicate their entire summer to playing a sport they hate. Luckily for them, that'll never happen as the world's greatest character, Randy Marsh, makes an appearance. This leads to an all-out brawl between him and Bat Dad, resulting in Randy getting his ass beat. The umpire threatens to disqualify South Park if the fighting continues, so the boys cheer Randy on, leading to another all-time banger of a quote.
I didn't hear no bell.
Randy wins the fight, South Park is disqualified, and everything works out in the end. Like I said earlier, it's one of my all-time favorite episodes, and one that I feel like most American kids can relate to at least a little bit. Whether it's the embarrassing parent getting into it with all the other parents or officials, having to play a sport they hate because their parents enjoyed it as kids, or whatever. Just a great episode. Now, on to my least favorite episode, and one that I'm not really going to spend too much time on because it just feels weird to talk about to me. Episode 7, Erection Day. Like I said, this one's a bit weird. It's entirely centered around Jimmy Valmer, the cripple comedian. There's a talent show coming up, and he's ready to dominate it. But there's just one problem. He can't stop getting random boners in class. Fellas, we've all been there, right? That's basically the entire episode, though. Jimmy can't stop getting random erections at school or at key moments and needs to find out how to control it. He tries everything from Cartman acting as a wingman for him to get laid, to just outright trying to hire a hooker, which is a bit off-putting when you consider the fact that, he's in 4th grade, but whatever. It's got some funny bits in it, like it's still a South Park episode, but for me personally, it's on the lower end. I don't necessarily skip it if it's on, but it's not really one I go out of my way to watch, if you feel me. Onward to season 10, which, in my opinion, has got to be the greatest season of South Park in the entire series. I'm gonna read you some of the episodes in the season. You ready? Man Bear Pig, Stanley's Cup, Miss Teacher Bangs a Boy, Mystery of the Urinal Deuce, but none of them hold a finger to the legendary Make Love, Not Warcraft. It's got a 9.5 out of 10 on IMDB, and if you were to ask someone what their favorite South Park episode is, or how they heard about the show, I'd be willing to guess that an overwhelming majority would point to this one episode. Cartman, Kenny, Kyle, and Stan are playing World of Warcraft, but their characters keep getting killed by an unkillable enemy. The enemy player has played World of Warcraft so much that he's surpassed the level cap and can kill players in non-PvP zones, even if they don't agree to the duel. Oh, and he looks like this. Funny story, if you know Thor, Pirate Software, that guy, this is his dad. He told a story about it on stream one time, and this is his dad and his dad's apartment. Go look it up, it's a funny story. He tells it way better than I ever could, but yeah, now you have that info. So this dude is running around killing thousands of players, which is not only pissing off the gang, but is actually having a negative effect on the game itself, causing players to stop playing World of Warcraft and dropping WoW sales in the process.
How do you kill that which has no life?
This is where Cartman lays out his master plan. If the boys simply hide in the forest killing boar, they can grind out levels under the radar and return fully geared to take on the Turbo Nerd in one final battle. This leads to an epic training montage that we can't show because, copyright stuff, but fun fact, there's an animation error in the montage where during it, they use the fat models of the boys from the back when they're in the computer lab, but when it cuts to them inside the computer lab, they're still skinny. And now you too can see it every single time you watch this episode in the future. You're welcome. Oh, and during all of this, Randy gets super into the game and makes it his entire personality as well. So now that the boys look like any other World of Warcraft player, it's time for their final battle.
Ma'am?
Yes, hon.
More Hot Pockets!
Right away, hon.
This lasts like 12 hours or so, and during that time, the leaders of Blizzard show up looking for Stan. When they can't find him, they give Randy the Sword of 1,000 Truths. There's a whole prophecy about the sword, and it's sacred to the point where the devs don't even speak of it. Basically, it does a shit ton of DPS and has instant mana burn. So Randy's now got this sword, and he has to get it to Stan. Back to the boys real quick, they've got an S-tier gaming setup going on. I would have killed for this as a kid. There's this hilariously disgusting moment here too where Cartman has diarrhea again and calls his mom down, who brings one of those hospital toilet things for him to shit in. Yeah. So Randy finally makes it to Stan, and as Stan walks him through the trading menu, the Turbo Nerd sees them and kills Randy, but not before the trade is completed. Equipped with the Sword of 1,000 Truths, the boys kill the nerd, saving the World of Warcraft. At the time this episode released, both World of Warcraft and South Park were at the top of their games. This was just before Burning Crusade, and WoW was one of, if not already, the biggest MMO ever created, and South Park was pulling in over 3 million viewers per episode on Comedy Central alone. So when this episode came out, it was a massive collaboration that no one saw coming. On to the lowest rated episode in the season, A Million Little Fibers, coming in at a measly 6.2 out of 10. The story's target is Oprah, and how she used to have guests on her show just to participate in that tried and true gotcha journalism that middle-aged housewives love to watch. Towley is at an all-time low. He's fired from his job at P.F. Chang's and can't stop getting high, so he decides to write a book of memoirs. In a rather unexpected turn, the book isn't all that bad, except for the fact that
You're a towel.
because of this, Towley gets a little high and edits his book, changing towel for person and making the biography out as if he was just a normal human being and not, in fact, a towel. He sends it back in and the publishers love it. So, on to the big holdup of the episode. Towley's first appearance on Oprah goes really well when the book takes off and everyone's happy. Well, almost everyone. Except for Oprah's vag. I'm not even kidding. It's sentient, and so is her asshole for some reason, because why not? They're jealous because they don't get any attention anymore, their words, not mine, so they expose Towley to some journalists. So Oprah ends up calling out Towley on her show, but when it's revealed that she'll be working more than ever, her crotch pulls out a gun and takes everyone hostage. This leads to a standoff with the SWAT team, where they inevitably shoot Oprah's ass, causing her vag to blow its brains out. And that's kinda it. coincidentally, this is also my least favorite episode of the season, and I can see why others tend to feel that same way. Now, normally, I would have also agreed that Make Love Not Warcraft is my personal favorite of Season 10, but this season is so damn good that I figured it deserves 2 spotlights. So my personal favorite is gonna be Miss Teacher Bangs a Boy, for the sole purpose of Cartman turning into Dog the Bounty Hunter. It's Cartman's turn to be the hall monitor, and as expected, he takes it too far. He even shoots a promo and dresses just like Dog the Bounty Hunter. It's a pretty hilarious episode, and exactly what you'd expect to see from Cartman when he gets any position of power.
This is the mace that they use on bears!
I also love that whenever he catches someone or ends an interaction, he hits him with the...
You can't just push me up against the...
He also catches Butters at one point, and while waiting for the principal, lights up a cigarette for him like he's just a perfect mirror image of the dog. So while Cartman's doing that, Ike, Kyle's younger brother, has a crush on his teacher. They develop a relationship and sneak out to kiss in the hallways and stuff. He starts going to her house for extra tutoring. It's pretty wild shit, but eventually Kyle catches him. When Kyle goes to the police to tell them about it, they take him seriously, until it's revealed to be a female teacher, in which case the cops just kinda laugh it off and hit him with another famous meme. Once it's clear that the cops aren't gonna do anything about it, Kyle turns to Cartman for help, alerting him that they're making out in the hallways during class. The dog catches them and reports them to the principal, literally the only good thing Cartman has ever done for anyone, even if that includes using bear mace. So this all leads up to Ike and the teacher running away, with Cartman and his bounty hunter team, equipped with a Beth of his own, hunting the pair down, bear macing everyone in a hotel. Trapped on a rooftop with nowhere left to run, Miss Teacher Lady aims for the bushes while Ike tricks her and runs back to Kyle. Happy ending for everyone. Season 11 is a close second for me for best South Park season of all time. The best episode is number 10, Imagination Land, but there's a holdup here, because Imagination Land is a 3-episode story, so it wouldn't make sense to just cover the first episode of it. That being said, I'm going to do a brief overview of the entire plot, because if I break down all 3 episodes, we're going to be here for like 15 minutes on one story. The boys are hunting leprechauns in the woods one afternoon, and Kyle and Cartman have a deal.
Getting nervous, Kyle? When that leprechaun shows up, you must suck my balls. Don't forget I have a signed contract from you.
There's only one problem. Leprechauns aren't real. Or are they? This is the massive underlying story beneath the main plot. It's as simple as Kyle has to uphold a signed contract and tries to get out of it. And while they're fighting about it one day, this guy shows up.
Are you gonna rape us?
No?
He sings the Imagination song and transports the boys to Imagination Land. There's just one problem. If you feel like you're getting some deja vu during this scene, that's because it's a callback to the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, where they do the D-Day landing. Except in this instance, it's all your favorite childhood heroes and characters dying at the hands of some terrorists. The boys manage to escape on the back of a dragon, leaving Butters behind to get assaulted. Everyone wakes up the next day thinking it was just a dream, only to find out Butters is missing, meaning that it was real and actually happened and Butters is trapped in Imagination Land. As it turns out, the Pentagon is already aware of and monitoring the situation. Cartman just doesn't give a fuck about any of that and takes Kyle to court, where a judge rules that
you have 24 hours to suck aforementioned balls. If after that time you still refuse, the court will be forced to arrest you for contempt. Next case.
Back to the Pentagon. The high-ranking officials can't imagine a plan to stop the terrorists, so they bring in people like M. Night Shyamalan and Michael Bay, but all they do is talk about twists and special effects instead of actual story plots. After bringing in Mel Gibson, they land on doing background checks for everyone in the video, identifying Butters as the outlier. The military stops by just as Kyle is about to suck Cartman's balls to pick up the boys, and the episode ends with the walls of hell being broken down in Imagination Land. The second installment of the story largely centers around Stan and Kyle being interviewed by the Pentagon staff as they try to remember how to enter Imagination Land, as well as the ongoing battle inside of Imagination Land. After the terrorists blew up the wall to the evil side, the evil imaginations assault the good side. It's actually really cool. You've got Jason Voorhees and stormtroopers on one side, and Aslan from Narnia, and it's like Spider-Man on the other. Shit's wild. The boys end up singing the Imagination song, which opens a portal into Imagination Land. With that portal open, the government sends in Kurt Russell and the squad of soldiers to check out as Cartman nosedives through a window. Anyway, those soldiers are massacred by the woodland critters from an earlier season, and instead of people returning, Man-Bear-Pig comes through the portal, killing most of the scientists. Kyle seemingly dies, but Cartman's able to bring him back to life in a seemingly really touching moment, but it's all just for the fact that he's got a contract to fulfill. The final part of Imagination Land is the epic battle between good and evil. Oh, and then for no reason at all, the US does what it tends to do best and sticks its nose in other people's business before deciding to just nuke Imagination Land. There's a huge battle, it's pretty sweet. Butters becomes like a god there and can imagine people back to life and give them more supplies and quite literally saves the world before being grounded by his parents in the end. Kyle says he'll never fulfill the contract, so Cartman simply imagines that Kyle does, in front of all of the Pentagon officials and all of their friends. It's a good time. This was a super short summary of the 3 episodes though, so if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend just watching it for yourself. It's really good. D-Yikes is the lowest rated episode in Season 11, coming in at a 7.7 out of 10. The story centers around Miss Garrison dealing with a breakup, turning into a lesbian, and saving a gay bar in a 300 Spartans vs. the Persians remake. This is also my least favorite episode of the season, but I want to touch on that for a moment because Season 11 is pretty unique in the fact that I don't really dislike any episode. Like, even the worst episode in the season is still hilarious to me, and I'd put it higher than any other worst on the list so far, in my opinion. That being said, this is how the episode starts.
Everyone sit down and shut the fuck up!
Miss Garrison has her heart broken again by a man. This scene always makes me chuckle a bit because I don't know about you guys, but in high school, I had this chemistry teacher who would have like full-blown meltdowns like this at least once a week. And I mean meltdowns, like full-on bawling her eyes out in the middle of the hallway, coming into class and throwing shit around. She was a mess, and it always reminded me of this intro. Anyway, she gives the class a book report that needs to be written by Monday, and since the boys don't want to read an entire book and write an essay over the weekend, they do the sensible thing of going to a truck rental and hiring some Mexicans to do it for them. While that's going on, Miss Garrison meets a lady while working out, who invites her out for a drink at a gay bar. I can't show the next part, but I can definitely fucking quote it. "Oh, scissor me timbers." It's a real quote in the episode.
Back at Blockbuster,
Randy's walking through the aisles looking for Stan. The next morning, the boys go back to the Mexicans and get their book reports. There's a great part here where they're summarizing the book to the boys, and they get to the point where they just start saying that the guy doesn't make any money, and all the Mexicans take their hats off and start tearing up. But then when it's time to hand over the essays, it turns out the Mexicans were actually writing to their essays, not the actual report. Luckily, it doesn't matter because Miss Garrison is in a much better mood and tells the kids about Lesbos, the new bar she's going to. Later that night, it's revealed that the owners are selling the bar to the Persians. They even send in an emissary to deal with the pissed off Lesbos. Much like the movie 300, Miss Garrison does the Spartan kick of death right in the dick. This leads to an epic standoff between the lesbians and the Persians. This part always makes me laugh. So they're all standing out front, right? And Miss Garrison just yells,
Lesbos! Positions!
and they let out this battle cry and get into this weird defensive stance. Eventually, the Persians get tired and want to go shopping for new sunglasses, so they leave, and this leads to Xerxes making an appearance on a gold Hummer and wearing Gucci accessories that only a Persian would think was cool. It's clear that this plan of simply standing in front of the building isn't going to be a long-term solution, so the girls hire these same Mexicans that the boys used, having them go undercover to gather info on Xerxes. Miss Garrison ends up meeting with Xerxes, where it's revealed that Xerxes is actually a woman, and they end up scissoring, saving Lesbos in the process. My personal favorite episode of Season 11 is the first one, with apologies to Jesse Jackson. It's a controversial one, but it's widely known as the Wheel of Fortune episode. Yeah, that one. It does what Southpark does best, which is tackles a serious topic by poking fun at it and both sides of the fight. Randy says the N-word on Wheel of Fortune, thinking he was gonna win $20,000. I remember the first time I saw this, I spit out my soda and damn near pissed myself laughing so hard. It was so unexpected at the time and caught me completely off guard. But that ends up spreading throughout Southpark and most of the US because it was such a huge deal. So while Randy deals with the repercussions of that incident, Stan tries to win back Token's friendship. The exchanges between these two are more of what the conversation is really like in the real world. Stan, ignorant to the issue, tries to brush it under the rug because it's uncomfortable to talk about, and doesn't take Token's feelings into account, having been the victim of it. While that tension builds, Randy tries a bunch of shit to win back the good graces of the public, starting by kissing the ass of Jesse Jackson, who told Randy he was the emperor of black people. He then tries to culture himself more by going to a black comic set, only to get called out.
Say hi, nigga guy. Hi, nigger guy.
After that, he goes to an open mic poetry thing and drops some more one-liners. Michael Richards makes a guest appearance, and eventually Randy ends up launching a campaign to get the phrase banned in the English language, making it illegal, with the best part being that all the white senators don't give a shit about the problem until they're threatened with the fact that one day this might affect them, in which case the law passes with the only opposed being the sole black senator. Oh, and while all of that is going on, Cartman fights a midget. I'm not even kidding, that's arguably the best part of this episode. He goes blow for blow with a midget while Down with the Sickness plays in the background. It's so fucking funny. Season 12's best episode, Major Boobage, is a bit difficult to show, mainly because the entire plot centers around Kenny and Gerald getting high and trying to see some massive honkers. And I don't think we can show any of that on YouTube without getting immediately flagged. Because of that, I'm just gonna skip this one entirely. Sorry guys, but considering it's the highest rated of the season, I think we can all agree it's top tier Southpark. Alright, onto one of the worst episodes of Season 12, Brittany's New Look, with a 7.1 out of 10 on IMDB. Maybe it's because I just watched this episode while I was sick, or it's just the plot that does it to me, but this entire episode feels like one giant fever dream. Britney Spears is having her entire life monitored and mocked by paparazzi, and when the boys realize there's money to be made from it, they join in, dressing Butters up like a squirrel and pretending to be her kids. This leads to her having a meltdown, and by meltdown I mean she blows her brains out. Somehow, she survives this, and tries to revitalize her career, even though everyone still harasses her constantly. The boys also start to notice that, even her manager and agent are getting in on it, taking advantage of her, and laughing behind her back. Because of this, the boys decide to help her flee the area to live in peace. Kyle creates a diversion while Stan and Brittany board a train to get her to the North Pole, only for the conductor to notice and change course, leading Brittany directly into a paparazzi ambush. The boys try to intervene, but they're told how this is a form of human sacrifice, and needs to happen for the harvest. It's really stupid, but anyway, they end up killing her by taking pictures of her, and the scene fades to black. Sometime later, you can see everyone harvesting their crops, and it looks like another successful year at the farmer's market. It's while at the market that everyone notices a news story for Miley Cyrus. They all start singing and the boys join in. This is definitely a love it or hate it kind of episode. You either enjoy the over-the-top antics and cult-like story, or you find it a bit disturbing. To me, I just didn't find it all that funny, and it's another one that I agree with as the lowest of the season. Now onto my favorite episode of the season, and really one of my favorites of the entire series, Overlogging. This episode opens on a normal night in Southpark. Everyone's online, and Sharon kicks them off, including Randy, who uses his final few minutes to crank one out. The next morning, however, they all see this error. And it's not just the Marshes either. They go to the Bravlovskys, only to find out that they also don't have any internet. As it turns out, the entire town of Southpark, and really most of the US, has no internet. Randy ends up coming down with a man cold too, which always makes me laugh because this is exactly how me and my wife are when I get sick. Shelly also starts crashing out because she can't talk to her online boyfriend Amir. Because of all this, Randy decides to pack his family up and head out California way. The shot turns into a black and white driving montage that's supposed to resemble the migration out west, like in the 1800s, and is accompanied by a beautiful Randy Marsh cover song. Along the way, the Marshes park at a rest stop with some others where you find out just how widespread this outage is. They also realize that even if there is any internet out California way, that it'll be really slow when they get there, because everyone else is migrating over there to use it. The Marshes finally make it to Silicon Valley and find an internet refugee camp that looks more like Skid Row than anything, but I guess that's fitting. Everyone gets a ticket number and stands in line for their internet ration of 40 seconds per day per family. Randy needs the internet to jack off, but obviously can't do that in public, so he finds an off-brand market to go to, but it turns out to just be some dude drawing stick figures. While all that's going on, the government tries to communicate with the internet. And it's exactly how I imagine old people did basic troubleshooting in the early 2000s. Hell, they even fire a warning shot at it to try and get its attention. Alright, back to Randy, who finds out where they're holding the computer during the night and breaks in, only to be slimed with ectoplasm from a spooky ghost. As all seems lost, Kyle flies out to the internet and successfully solves the problem by simply unplugging and replugging in the router, restoring the internet to the entire US. While everyone is celebrating, there's a really awkward exchange where Shelly meets her online boyfriend in person, and they just kind of stand there for a bit in silence before being like, well, I'll email you when I get home, and then they leave. The final scene is Randy giving an impassioned speech about respecting the internet and only using it twice a day max for porn, ending with this dope-ass shot of him with a bald eagle behind him. Season 13 is another all-timer for me. It's up there with seasons 10 and 11 as easily some of the best South Park episodes ever made. And what better start than with episode 5's Fish Sticks? Real quick, look at this review some dude wrote about the episode. Talk about reading too far into things. I just saw that while grabbing the score, and I thought that was really funny. This is also one of the more well-known South Park episodes because it pokes fun at America's favorite lunatic, Kanye West. Cartman hangs out with Jimmy, who's working on writing some jokes. Of course, by hanging out, I mean Cartman sits on his ass eating chips while Jimmy throws jokes out at him. This goes on for some time before Jimmy finally lands on the classic.
Say, Eric, do you like fish sticks? Yeah? You like putting fish sticks in your mouth? Yeah? Well, what are you, Eric? A gay fish?
The joke rapidly spreads through the school and even makes it on some talk shows that night. It's a good time and everyone loves the joke, except for Kanye West, who doesn't get it. Now, since everyone is starting to use the joke, Cartman starts pushing Jimmy to patent it so that they can make money whenever someone uses the joke, and the two will get credit for it. This part always annoyed me a little bit because, in my opinion, it's true that the joke probably wouldn't have existed without Cartman being there for it. Now, obviously, he didn't do half of the work. He really didn't do anything. But it's because he keeps eating all the chips and pushes back when Jimmy's mom brings fruit over that the boys end up talking about fish sticks and how Cartman likes them, which leads to the fish dicks joke. What I'm getting at is that never takes place if Cartman isn't there. I remember one time me and a buddy got into it for like 20 minutes over this in college, and I stand by it. The joke isn't written if Cartman isn't being a fat, lazy piece of shit. Anyway, back to Kanye. He's busy unsuccessfully trying to prove that he is not, in fact, a gay fish. With how popular the joke had become, it was only a matter of time before Carlos Butthole Mencia stuck his head in and tried to take credit for it, admitting it on the Conan O'Brien show. Cut back to Kanye, who's reached the whiteboard stage of breaking things down in an attempt to figure out how he is a gay fish, and just can't quite grasp the play on words. Since he can't get answers this way, his only choice is to track down the creator of the joke and talk to them. Remember how I just said Carlos Mencia stole credit? This entire scene is basically just shitting on Carlos Mencia for stealing jokes and being an unlikable scumbag, and I love it. So they end up killing the man, which Jimmy and Cartman find out about while on Ellen, another one of America's lunatics. After leaving the show, the boys are kidnapped by Kanye, who has them try to explain the joke. But there's something that's been going on the whole time that I haven't talked about yet. See, this entire episode, in Cartman's mind, he's been warping the situation to where he actually created the joke, and Jimmy was doing nothing, instead of it being flipped. For some reason, he's also that fire dude from Fantastic Four, because fuck it. But yeah, he's just been doing these mental gymnastics, going from being the couch bum eating chips, to being the savior of South Park and the writer of the joke, even going so far as to accept responsibility, even if it means Kanye's gonna fuck him up with a baseball bat. His ego simply can't help it. Kanye relates to this because, psychopath, and ends up also accepting that he must be a gay fish, which leads to an absolute banger of a Trey Parker and Matt Stone song and dance where Kanye becomes a gay fish. The worst episode of Season 13 is Episode 4's Eat, Pray, Queef, with a 6.5 out of 10. This is another one where I don't think I can really show all that much of, just because of the content that's being displayed. And listen, if you're sitting there going, how the fuck can you show something like Scott Tenorman Must Die, but not clips from Eat, Pray, Queef, I wholeheartedly agree. It's fucking stupid, but I don't make the rules. The entire premise of this episode is boys like farts and girls think it's gross, so to get back at them, one of the students, Samantha Dunskin, queefs on Butters, landing him in the hospital. Honestly, I think the episode has a ton of funny moments, like how all the male adults are so grossed out that they cancel everything and call an emergency parents meeting and end up getting the Queef sisters, basically just Terrence and Phillip but for chicks, taken off air. The episode still stays true to the fact that it's a Terrence and Phillip episode, and those all tend to do horribly on IMDb compared to normal South Park episodes. Oh, there's also a whole scene with Martha Stewart that I definitely can't show, where she blows a confetti queef, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud before. But yeah, the entire episode is farts and queef jokes, and maybe it's just because I have the maturity of a toddler, but I think it holds up. Like, there's this scene where the family is eating at the table, and in a normal setting, you'd probably have the exchange with the father and son farting at the table and laughing about it, with the mother and daughter being annoyed. But in this instance, it's flipped, where it's Sharon and Shelly doing it, and Stan and Randy becoming increasingly upset. The episode delves into the greater moral lesson standpoint thing, where it's like women always have to work twice as hard to prove themselves, but it doesn't really land because, we're talking about queefing. For my personal favorite, I was torn between whale whores, the F word, Margaritaville, and WTF. But WTF has some moments that me and my friends still reference, so I decided to do that. Well, that, and I can't go over the contents of the F word without getting cancelled. After going to their first WWE event, the boys get super into wrestling, but like WWE wrestling, not competitive wrestling. They get the two confused and join the school's wrestling team before walking out after coming to the realization that wrestling is gay. After quitting the team, the boys work together to put on their own WWE-inspired wrestling show in their backyard, and it kinda takes off. Mainly because all the rednecks in town believe the characters are real. Like, Cartman's character is just addicted to getting abortions, and Stan's character fought in Nam, and it cuts to the rednecks and dude just goes,
That kid was in Nam? Man, that's incredible.
The show continues growing to the point where it's a full-on arena with bleachers seating, and you even get an El Pollo Loco appearance. So while all of that's unfolding, the wrestling teacher ends up losing his job because everyone thinks the boys are doing is real wrestling and that competitive wrestling is just gay porn. So when they see that on the gym teacher's phone, they just assume he's watching porn. It's a good time. This all culminates in Vince McMahon, pre-2024 news, visiting the show to scout out the boys. Everything's going according to plan until the coach tries to blow up the place, except he misses and takes out El Pollo Loco instead. He has a meltdown at the center of the ring, and everyone thinks it's acting, which leads Vince bringing the guy into the WWE, leaving the boys to start catfighting in the ring. It's a solid episode with a ton of funny quips, but the main shtick is all the rednecks believing the characters are real and getting overly attached to them. There's so many one-liners in this episode that always make for really good callbacks with the boys, so if you haven't seen it, I'd go watch it. My least favorite episode of season 13 is The Ring. It's another one of those where it's not a bad episode by any means, but I'm not a huge fan on Kenny-centric plots, which is exactly what this one is. Remember the Jonas Brothers and how they took over Disney for like 2 or 3 years and got super into purity rings for some reason? Well, that's the episode. Kenny has a girlfriend, and things are getting pretty serious. They've been going out for 2 weeks now. There's only one problem.
Your girlfriend is a notorious whore.
The boys confront Kenny about this, but he doubles down, taking her to see her favorite band, the Jonas Brothers. This is a little weird to talk about because they're like 4th and 5th graders, so I'm just gonna kinda outline the plot from now on. So the whole selling point of the Jonas Brothers is to sell sex to kids subliminally. They bring them out to the shows, get them all worked up, and then push the purity ring on them to make themselves look better. Here, let not trademarked Mickey Mouse tell it.
We make the posters with little girls reaching for your junk. Then you have to wear purity rings or else Disney Company looks bad.
The funny downside of this is that Kenny and his girlfriend end up buying and wearing purity rings, which turns them into like an old married couple who only have fun by hanging out with other old married couples, which I always thought was really funny. Eventually, there's a whole Mickey Disney meltdown at one of the shows, and Kenny and Tammy decide to take the rings off and head to TGI Fridays for some nefarious activities, which kills Kenny in the process. Season 14 is the most sound season across the board, and if you don't believe me, there are 4 episodes that share the highest score of 8.7. those being You Have Zero Friends, which is the Facebook episode, Medicinal Fried Chicken, where KFC becomes illegal, and episodes 200 and 201, where Tom Cruise launches a whole war on Southpark to bring Muhammad to them. Now those 2 episodes are banned, so I'm just gonna do the You Have Zero Friends because I enjoyed this one a little bit more than Medicinal Fried Chicken. To the younger generation, you guys missed out on this, but I promise you, when Facebook first started taking off, this was pretty much exactly how things went. You had a third cousin's twice removed aunt's stepmom's friend trying to add you as a friend, and if you said no, you'd get family members being like, you better add them, it's rude if you don't, and makes us look bad. It was a fucking shit show. And yes, Facebook was 1,000 times better than MySpace, without a doubt. Facebook had Farmville. What did MySpace have? People who Chris Hansen wanted to sit down with? In this episode, everyone except Stan is sucked into Facebook. And it's all about who has the most friends. The more friends you have on Facebook, the higher your social status in school. And again, for the most part, this was pretty accurate in real life, at least at the beginning when it started blowing up. Kyle ends up feeling bad for this one kid, Kip Drorty, so he adds him, which ends up tanking his social status because Kip has no friends. And when they see that Kyle's friends with him, all of those friends drop Kyle. At the same time, Stan gets fed up with everyone asking him about Facebook, so he ends up joining it and dealing with the annoying spam that all of your grandparents now throw at you on the site. Stan's account ends up growing to almost 1 million friends before he tries to delete it, but his account is sentient now and ends up getting literally sucked into Facebook. Stan and his profile face off in an epic Yahtzee battle, resulting in Stan winning and returning to the real world. Having escaped, Stan sends all of his friends to Kip, sending him from a complete loser into social fame. There's also a really funny moment in the middle of the episode here, where Cartman is trying to help Kyle gain new friends, so he takes him to chat roulette, and it's just a bunch of dudes jerking off constantly. George R.R. Martin would love that site. I'd say someone should tell him, but then we never get Winds of Winter, so everyone keep your mouth shut. The worst rated episode of the season is Crippled Summer, with a 6.8 out of 10. Much like the other seasons, this is also my least favorite episode as well. Remember Towley from A Million Little Fibers? Well, thanks to the boys, he's got a job at Lake Titicaca, a summer camp for kids with physical and mental disabilities. Unfortunately, Towley is still doing meth and crack and all that shit and ends up getting fired. The boys stage an intervention for him and it plays out pretty much exactly how I imagine John Mulaney's intervention went. Anyway, he ends up going to rehab and his life is better by the end, and that's the main plot. The subplot is a bit more stupid, but it also feels like it's ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous because the main plot is just so heavy. Nathan, remember him? The one with Down syndrome who gives Jimmy steroids for the Special Olympics? Yeah, he spends the entire time trying to kill Jimmy in order to attempt to win the camp championship. Except every plan backfires, with Nathan being on the receiving end of things like getting Cosby'd by a shark, getting blown up by C4, shot by Indians with bows and arrows, and bitten by a black mamba, shout out Kobe. It's an odd entry and doesn't really fit with the other episodes in the season, making it pretty clearly the worst of the group. Hopefully I'm able to get in some good graces here, because Cream Frige is my personal favorite of the season, and I'd wager that it's probably at least a few of yours as well. I'm a sucker for Randy heavy episodes, and this one is no different. The entire intro sets you up to think Randy's gonna watch porn when Sharon goes to bed. He gets all positioned, tells Sharon he's not gonna watch the bad channels, and then boom. Even the music on the show sounds like he's watching it, but like, no, it's fucking Guy Fieri cooking some ribs. When everyone comes down for breakfast the next morning, Randy's chefing it up in the kitchen, making everyone a frittata and topping it off with some nice cream frige. Everyone's visibly upset over it because they just want like normal breakfast, like Pop-Tarts. But later on, while in the middle of another episode, the TV gets parental locked by Sharon, which forces Randy to call the cooking hotline, and it's fucking hysterical. Seriously, whenever me or my buddies are making dinner and we send a Snapchat or a picture of anything to the group chat, our immediate responses are always,
"You gonna deglaze that fucking pan?"
I can't even count the number of times I've sent my friends a picture of like pan roasted chicken or like ribs or something, and just an immediate FaceTime to one of my buddies going, "You gonna deglaze that pan?" I deglaze the fuck out of that pan, and then just hanging up. I love my friends. Sorry, getting sidetracked. This escalates up to Randy getting a job at the school cafeteria and trying to implement his cooking skills instead of just giving out lukewarm chicken patties and chocolate milk. The boys end up calling in Super Chef Bobby Flay and Gordon Ramsay, who's really just Cartman all dressed up, and they do this massive cook-off, but Randy can't find his creme fraiche. While all of this is going on, Sharon's on a journey of her own. Randy is so caught up in cooking that he doesn't even pay attention to her anymore, so she starts working out again. And what better way to do that than with the shake weight? It's perfect. It tells you when to work out, it compliments you, tells you when it's going to sleep mode, or when it's in work mode, and even showers you in water and gives you a cab fare when you're finished. That progresses alongside Randy becoming more unhinged, and it leads to this moment at the end where Randy tells Sharon he hasn't slept in days and he can't sleep because he's in work mode. Sharon handles business, and Randy just full-on gives up his hobby. Season 15 is the first time so far that I've fully agreed with the best and worst episodes of the season. For the best, you've got You're Getting Old. Now, if you're relatively new to Southpark, you know that clip that keeps doing rounds on TikTok and YouTube Shorts where it's Trey Parker, Matt Stone, and Bill Hader all in studio doing the voice lines and they keep breaking character when Bill goes, "What burr?" Yeah, this is the episode. Stan gets a Tween Wave CD for his birthday, and Sharon takes it away because she doesn't want him listening to that type of music. Randy tells her that she's turning into the old people who think the new generation of music is ass, so she tells him to listen to it, and it's literal shit and fart noises, but Randy pretends to enjoy it anyway to stay cool. There's only one problem here. When Stan sneaks a listen the next night, the entire album sounds like shit to him too. This freaks him out, so he goes to the doctor, who diagnoses him with
being a cynical asshole.
Things continue to deteriorate between Randy and Sharon as Randy continues to pretend to like the kids' music, and even starts a one-man show as Steamy Ray Vaughan down at the bowling alley. This leads to the best part of the episode, these two fucks. Now, I'm not sure how much we can show before the clip gets claimed, but my absolute favorite part of this is when the dude's telling his friend about how Randy shits through all of his pants while playing, and goes, "It's like some kind of britches holocaust." It gets me every time. Anyway, Stan continues alienating himself from his friends, who are getting fed up with him being a cynical prick about everything. While that friendship falls apart, Randy starts performing with Steamy Nicks. She's like Stevie Nicks, but she shits her britches. Another great moment here where Sharon intervenes and yells at Randy to stop, and the farmer hits him with,
I agree. Why don't you leave them poor britches alone?
Them britches have had enough.
This is a two-part story, but this video's already getting pretty long, and we've still got like 10 more seasons to go, so I'm gonna wrap this one up here. The story continues in episode 8's Asperger's, and I highly recommend you go watch it. It's got a whole tie-in with The Matrix, it's really good. The lowest ranked episode of season 15 is Funnybot, with a score of 6.3 out of 10. Jimmy's hosting the comedy awards during lunch and recess, and ends up pissing off the Germans in the process after they win the award for being the least funny people on the planet. The boys try to warn Jimmy about the backlash, but Jimmy isn't really fazed by it. So what is the German rebuttal? Well, they make a robot designed to be the funniest thing ever made. Oh, Tyler Perry's also sprinkled in throughout the entire episode, just in case you weren't quite there on the "I'm gonna drink bleach" spectrum. To me, Funnybot is super annoying throughout the entire episode, but maybe that's the point. I don't know, but it's not an episode I go out of my way to watch. Anyway, the robot ends up trying to blow up the Earth as the ultimate joke, but Jimmy's able to save the day by getting it stuck in a logic loop, since comedy is subjective and can't be taken seriously. So by giving an award for comedy, you fuck things up.
Comedy award is, what is the meaning?
The episode ends with them sealing a giant vault in the ground and filling it with concrete, before revealing the twist that it was actually Tyler Perry in there and not Funnybot. Classic. Season 16 has some lower scores here, but there's still a few solid episodes. There's two that are tied for the highest rating of 8.3, those being Insecurity and A Nightmare on FaceTime. Since I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan, I'm going to talk about A Nightmare on FaceTime. The episode kicks off with Randy buying everyone expensive gifts and proclaiming that the family is rich now. How did they come into such fortunes? Well, it's simple really. That's right, for $10,000, you too can own a Blockbuster video building. Probably. Actually, they're probably just giving those away by now. Look how annoyed Sharon looks while they're driving. Randy's super excited for it because he thinks everyone still likes renting movies as opposed to streaming services or Redbox. Moving to Friday, there's been no customers and the family's starting to get a little annoyed, except for Randy, who's holding out hope. Saturday comes around and there's a good scene of some kids who are too scared to go near the building to get their ball. They see Randy step out and pick up their ball and are scared off by him. A few days later, Randy comes across someone in the store, but when he goes to help them, they just dissipate into nothing, which sparks a few more ghosts to appear, but only to Randy, with the rest of the family watching as he slowly starts losing it. The following day, Stan's all dressed up and ready to go trick-or-treating with the boys as the Avengers, but Randy tells him no because it's gonna be a big day and he needs everyone here to help with the store. The boys come to a workaround, with Stan FaceTiming in on an iPad and being pulled on a skateboard. Cartman's all pissed off about it because he thinks no one's gonna recognize them, only for everyone to confuse him out of the entire group.
Thor and Bruce Valanche!
I'm not Bruce Valanche!
Randy continues to devolve into Jack Torrance until he goes into the front of the store, where it's a literal shot remake of that scene from The Shining where Jack orders a drink from the bartender who killed his daughters. Quick post-edit comment here, it's actually not the bartender who kills the kids, it's the previous caretaker, Grady. But sorry for the mix-up. Let's get back. While that's happening, the boys witness a burglary where two dudes try and loot a red box, only to realize that no one uses them anymore. The boys are caught and Stan is tortured via iPad, with the robbers throwing it in a field. When the boys go to file a police report, the detectives do the Monster Mash skit, and I always love it because it's just so fucking stupid.
How many people at the Monster Mash? Most of the town, sir. It's a graveyard smash. Look, whatever we do, we better hurry. It gets on in a flash.
Chicken nuggets and fries, sweet and sour sauce.
Going Native is the lowest ranked episode this season, coming in at a 6.7 out of 10, and looking at it, I think the only reason it's ranked so low is because it's not focused on the boys, but instead really just Butters and Kenny. Butters is PMSing or something and freaking out at all the guys. He even lashes out at his parents, to which they say he's reached the age of Panua, which literally just means to widen, so do with that info what you will. It's revealed here that Butters is actually from Hawaii. Kind of. He was born there, and his parents moved to Southpark just before he started preschool, and now it's time for him to go back to his roots. The entire episode is set to just be white people culturally appropriating Hawaii, where they have all these timeshares there, or took a cruise or vacations there years ago, and they think that means they all live there now. There's a pretty funny moment of how they reveal it too, where the tourists are arguing about who the real natives
Your
are.
ancestors came on an airplane 6 months ago. Our ancestors sailed here on a cruise ship 9 months ago.
I also love how they have these moments of Kenny writing to Stan and Kyle and Cartman, and it's written like an 18th century traveler sending letters back home, and then it cuts to the boys and they're like,
On the morrow, what the fuck is wrong with Kenny?
I was trying to think of like what the vibes for this were, and I don't know how many of you guys remember this account, but the old Civil War Andrew Luck Twitter account who would write tweets based on the outcomes of games but make it seem like he was writing to his mom during the Civil War, and it just feels exactly like that. Anyway, all the natives are freaking out because they're gonna lose their rewards membership program, or something like that, so they retaliate by launching golf balls and bocce balls at a cruise ship, with Butters landing a perfect shot and actually sinking the entire thing. Because of this, the US Coast Guard shows up and forms a blockade, stopping the import of the precious Chi-Chis, as well as returning fire on the golfers. This is where Kenny shows up, having been swept away in a current earlier in the episode, but he finds like Elvis's old abandoned house or something, and it's loaded with vodka and stuff for Chi-Chis. With all the natives completely loaded, they say they'll keep fighting, so the Coast Guard reinstates the rewards cards. It's a pretty stupid episode, but there's a ton of funny moments sprinkled in. And that being said, I can see why it's the lowest rated, if nothing more than it being a Butters focused episode compared to the rest of the season. My favorite episode of season 16's gotta be Reverse Cowgirl. If one episode has stuck with me over the years, it's gotta be this one. Clyde's mom falls into the toilet after Clyde keeps leaving the seat up and ends up dying from it due to the suction created from falling into it one day. Because of this, the fucking TSA are brought in to monitor all toilets, setting up a TSA check line outside of everyone's bathrooms. These two are my favorite one-off characters in any episode because there's two TSA agents near an airport that I frequent, and guys, I'm not kidding, they're fucking identical. It's like Trey and Matt flew out of the same airport, got the same agents, and went, we need to put them in an episode. Every time I fly out of my city, I just think of these two. I don't even really care about the plot of the episode. I watch it solely for the scenes with the TSA agents. Like when Gerald comes out and they wipe him, you can call him a big boy. Or when they go,
asshole clear.
Thanks.
There's a lot of stuff going on in the episode though. Like TSA takes over the bathrooms, which sparks Cartman to fight back against them, even going so far as to kidnap an agent, put a baby in a bathroom with a gun, and black out a camera, which leads to a
security breach.
While Cartman's fighting the good fight, the boys are trying to sue the dead using the inheritance money left behind for Clyde. The entire lawyer's setup is like one of those medium's houses that are fake haunted with like strings pulling chairs and all that, which is funny to watch, and he keeps goading them into giving more money before the actual ghost of Clyde's mom appears, and it's just like, guys, what the hell are you doing? He's a fraud. Like I said, the plot isn't all that great, but it's all the small moments and quips throughout the episode that make it a personal favorite for me. Kicking things off with Season 17, we have Episode 7's Black Friday, coming in at an 8.9 out of 10 on IMDB. This is another one of those multi-episode stories, but I'm just going to focus on the first one because it's hilarious. I mean, really the entire story is fantastic, but I don't want to spend 30 minutes talking about it. The 3-episode plot is South Park's take on Game of Thrones, and it works perfectly with the characters they use. Black Friday is rapidly approaching, and with it is the release of the PS4 and Xbox One, sparking the greatest console war the world has ever seen. Just kidding, that was the PS3 and the Xbox 360, but still. The episode opens up with Randy Marsh taking a part-time job to become a security guard, which is the show's version of the Night's Watch. While he's busy with that, Cartman is busy gathering all of the boys for a meeting in the Great Hall. Inside, you can find several great warriors such as Kyle the Jew, Stan the Knight, and Princess Kenny. It's here that Cartman explains to the boys the concept of Black Friday, and tells them how, if they work together, they can get their next-gen consoles. Some of my favorite parts of this 3-parter are the Channel 9 news interviews with the people waiting to get inside the mall. They're so over the top and stupid, and it's peak South Park. Like, you've got the Walmart shopper with meth teeth on a Rasco scooter who douses herself in pig blood just to squeeze through people easier. And you have the family who eats the weakest child before going in to conserve their strength so that they can get a Blu-ray player. And who could forget this absolute weapon?
They can kiss my fat vagina!
While more parents continue to gather outside the mall, the boys are hard at work sharpening their weapons and practicing combat in their respective camps. Another fantastic portion of the saga is when Cartman tasks Butters with studying Game of Thrones so that he can learn how to betray people and get into the mall, and it's just Butters talking about floppy wieners while the dragons and zombies are on their way.
It started. I keep watching that show and I'm still waiting for the darn dragons to show up and kick everyone's butts. But all I get is wiener, wiener, wiener. It's not all gay wiener, but when they do show a straight guy's wiener, it's all soft and floppy, even though we just got done hipping a pretty girl.
Immediately after this, you find out that around half of the boys thought they were fighting to get the PS4, while Cartman's group is fighting for Xbox Ones. This ends up causing a rift between the two groups, with rival factions forming as they both decide to fight for their respective consoles, thus literally forming the start of the console wars. As the two factions work on growing their numbers, a new product releases. Just in time for the holidays, who could pass up on Stop Touching Me Elmo? A must-have toy for every child and Catholic priest.
Have you ever been tickled on the inside?
A massive portion of the saga takes place in this random dude's garden as well, and involves Cartman manipulating and devising plans to get everyone to betray each other. It's supposed to be a parody of that garden that the Tyrells like to hang out in Westeros, and it always ends with this old dude leaning out his window and going back and forth with Cartman, telling him to get out. Towards the end of the first episode, it's clear that the PS4 fighters are severely outnumbered, so they decide to take drastic measures and reach out to the CEO of Sony, coaxing him to release the
Black Friday Bandudu.
This causes even more people to start lining up outside of the mall, and when Randy goes out to shoo them off, he's attacked, forcing the rest of the guards to come help. During the scuffle, the one-eyed Paul Blart captain is stabbed, but before he dies, he actually takes his eye scar off and passes it on to Randy, making him the new leader of the mall's watch. One of those moments where you accidentally become too important at your job and now it's ruining your whole life. Randy style. The end of this episode reveals that the PlayStation Group now has an army of their own and are just as capable of fighting as the Xbox army. Like I said several times, this is a 3-part story, and it's, in my opinion, the best saga they've done in South Park, even beating out Imagination Land.
There's a ton of small references and Easter eggs in the episodes that all tie to Game of Thrones. Obviously, there's a ton of direct references and parodies as well, but it's also just genuinely a fantastic story and peak South Park. On to the lowest ranked episode of Season 17. We have episode 4's Goth Kids 3 Dawn of the Posers, coming in at a 6.8 out of 10. To me, I actually think this one's pretty funny, but since it follows the same pattern where the 4 boys aren't the protagonists, it's at the bottom. Much like the other Goth Kids episodes, the primary focus is on how the goths and emos are different, but everyone thinks they're the same. Because they kinda are. The episode itself even starts off with a new intro, replacing the normal song with an over-the-top emo cover, featuring the 4 main goth characters instead of Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny. So here's what the episode's about. There's a new camp that rehabilitates poorly behaved children, i.e. the goths. Henrietta, the fat chick in the group, gets sent off to it first, only to come home as an emo. This obviously scares the shit out of the boys because they too go home to find out that their parents have made similar plans for them as well.
No, you gotta listen to me! You don't know what you're doing!
Down to just 2 goths, they approach their sworn enemies for help, the Vamp Kids. I always love this part because the Vamp Kids treat their meeting like a school club event, where they all sit in this hall together and go over an agenda, and then the goths walk in and they all hiss at them. It always reminds me of this one chick that I went to high school with who would hiss at people and wear a fucking tail, and I always just assumed she was one of these weirdos. The goths explain the situation and that one of them is betraying everyone and is secretly an emo. Then this full-grown adult male just stands up and starts freaking out. He's my favorite character in the entire episode, hands down. Like, just look at how shocked dude's face is when the adult stands up. Honestly, I'd have the same reaction. The adult drops a banger of a line here, and for the first time I heard it, I damn near pissed myself I was laughing so hard, because it's so out of left field, but it fits perfectly here.
Biz, you better get your ass ready to run, motherfucker, cause you're a damn traitor. And I'll bet you is this little nigga right here.
Together, this ragtag team of outcasts work together to summon Edgar Allan Poe, who turns out to just be a massive, whiny, cynical bitch about everything. And not in like the steamy Ray Vaughn cynical sense, but the I'm better than all of you kind of way. While they all argue about how everyone else is a poser, this Afro dude wakes up in a warehouse surrounded by plants, and this weird psycho maintaining them. He explains that the emos are actually plants, and he helps them get into their human hosts, with a massive plant being the leader. The Vamp Kid Goth Squad rolls up and immediately gets kidnapped before summoning the ghost of Edgar Allan Poe again to shoot the plant, during which he notices that they're just ficuses from Lowe's Home and Garden. This ends up revealing the true secret twist of the episode.
Oh my god, are you serious?
Your wife Sarah put you up to this.
All of this was a giant fucking game show called Yes, I Was Scared, all set up by this dude's wife to scare him. Come to think of it, maybe that's why people didn't like this episode. There's no true wrap up to the story, it's just this sudden ending that doesn't feel like it belongs anywhere. Still, it's got a few haha moments in it. I was actually going to do Taming Strange as my personal least favorite for this season, but after rewatching it for this video, I decided to stick with this one as my personal least favorite as well. The Taming Strange one is just a bit funnier to me and has a better story to follow. It also literally has Tom Brady shitting himself, which is always going to get bonus points. Alright. This video was already like 2 hours long, and we've still got 8 or so more seasons, so I'm gonna try to tone down the synopsis a bit on some of these for the sake of getting this video out before 2025. Really, I'm just gonna start dumbing down the plots a bit and then talking about the best moments, while also cutting down on the worst rated episodes, and hopefully we'll be able to keep this under 3 hours? I don't know. I think that's fair though. Alright, on to season 18. We have Grounded Vindaloop with a 9.1 out of 10. S tier episode through and through. The boys get a VR headset. Well, kinda. Butters thinks he's got a VR headset, but really it's just Cartman fucking with him. Or is it? Whoa! The entire episode is like VR Inception, where some people are real and others aren't because it's VR within VR within VR, and they're stuck in this Vindaloop, but only Steve from customer service can help them get out of it. There's also this running gag where, in a rare turn of events, Cartman, or rather VR Cartman, is actually right the entire time. He's come to terms that he isn't real, while all of the other boys chastise him for it and tell him he's full of shit, but in reality, only Stan is real, and he takes off his goggles at the end to reveal that actually the entire show so far hasn't been real, and these are the real characters. There's some hilarious scenes here, like in the beginning when Butters thinks everything is fake, so he punches his dad in the nuts and gets grounded, or when he's just walking through the halls in the beginning and everyone's just staring at him like he's finally lost it. But my personal favorite has to be how the boys realize something's off and that they are stuck in VR. Butters calls them and tells them he's grounded, but he didn't do anything wrong. And all the kids are like, yeah, Butters, that happens all the time. But he's like, no, for real, guys, I did nothing wrong and I'm still grounded. And that's what starts the spiral. It's a callback to 17 seasons of Butters getting borderline abused by his parents, all tucked into one little 30-second moment in a near-perfect episode. Episode 10's Happy Holograms hits a 6.8 out of 10, and I 100% agree that it is the worst episode of the season. Southpark goes all meta and turns the show into a React Let's Play styled YouTube video, which is funny, but also gets old really fast. Cartman becomes a famous YouTuber and all the boys are watching him, but obviously he's a terrible influence on them, which is kind of what leads to this explosion in popularity, much like a Rice Gum or Logan Paul. I don't know, pick your favorite douche tuber and throw him in here. There's a bunch of chaos with a holographic Michael Jackson and Tupac who banged Sharon here, and no one ever seems to acknowledge that Sharon just casually cheats on Randy with fucking Tupac. Bill Cosby also makes a special appearance. It's just a very strange brain rot episode of South Park, and it's meant to be that way. There's constant jump cuts and transitions, the way a loud over-the-top YouTuber would do it. And I should know, considering I've been doing this job for 3 years across 3 separate channels now. All of this builds up until Cartman, brah, becomes transcendent, causing PewDiePie, yes, the guy from the bridge, to step in and overtake him, turning South Park into a Let's Play of Advanced Warfare. A very odd episode with callbacks to the entire season and its finale, though. It's not a bad finale by any means, but I completely understand why people don't like it, myself included. This was a toss-up between The Magic Bush and Go Fund Yourself, but I went with episode 1's Go Fund Yourself for a few reasons. 1, I think it's hilarious. 2, it rips on the Washington Redskins, now the Washington Commanders. And 3, fuck Dan Snyder. The boys drop out of school to form a startup company, and as everyone knows, all you need is a sick logo and a catchy name. What better name for a startup company than the Washington Redskins? Their trademark got pulled. They even come up with an absolutely beautiful logo. The entire premise of their company is founded through Kickstarter, where people can donate money to scams with zero regulation. What is the mission of the Washington Redskins, you might ask? Well, similar to the football team, they simply want to do nothing. And it works perfectly. Hundreds of thousands of people begin donating money, including ISIS. This is hilarious on multiple fronts here because if you're not into football, it's funny that the boys are doing nothing and getting rich, which is the running joke of a startup company. But if you do like football, the joke is spun to be that this is exactly Dan Snyder's model, or was before he was forced to sell the team. His entire business plan for the Washington Redskins, now Commanders, was to just keep a team on the field. Didn't matter how good or bad they were, and just slowly raise prices on everything from concessions to tickets. The stadium was literally falling apart at one point, like railings falling and almost taking out players. There was a drainage pipe leaking literal sewage and shit onto fans, and the owner, Dan Snyder, simply did nothing, much like the boys. The company Washington Redskins have a perfect line where Cartman answers and goes,
Washington Redskins, go fuck yourself.
And that part was so funny to me that it's actually my subscriber notification on Twitch and was my membership audio for years on YouTube on my main channel. Alright, so obviously all of the success of the company pisses off Dan Snyder, who still owns the team, the Washington Redskins. Cartman refuses to change the name or logo when Dan asks, but being an NFL owner, he convinces the other owners to commit mass media manipulation and convinces the boys to change their logo to be this. So now, when you think Washington Redskins, you'll immediately think of a dick and balls. There's some side plot stuff where Stan and Kyle split off to make their own company, but it's not super important to the story. Since Dan Snyder continues losing and hears people making fun of him and the team constantly, he ends up taking matters into his own hands and raids Kickstarter's HQ with the team. This was always so funny to me because they go in all tactical and then you've got like fucking Kirk Cousins just taking out a Kickstarter rep. I love it. So they end up taking down Kickstarter, seemingly beating the boys by taking them offline. But it's here where the company Washington Redskins really evolves into their new brand, which is essentially just Kickstarter 2.0. People can use the Washington Redskins to fund their own projects, with the company taking 10% of all funding and donations, meaning people will literally be giving them money for doing absolutely nothing. Everything seems to be going well for them, until the team Washington Redskins are massacred by the Cowboys on national television. Well, I say the team, but it's really just Dan Snyder going out on the field and trying to play the Cowboys by himself, who absolutely smoked the man. This causes people to drop support for the company, the Washington Redskins, en masse, and results in the boys having to go back to school at the end of the episode. Season 19 is the last season of the peak of South Park, and the quote-unquote decline starts after, at least for me. And I'll touch on that more in the beginning of Season 20 though. For now, let's talk about Season 19. Specifically, the best episode in Season 19, Sponsored Content, with an 8.8 out of 10 on IMDB. Over at Southpark Elementary, PC Principal is losing his mind because someone wrote an article that had the word retarded in it, referring to the school's lunch policy. He's about to crack some skulls until it's revealed that the author of the paper is Jimmy Vollmer, the cripple.
You gonna break his legs, PC Principal?
The look on PC Principal's face here is priceless, because I feel like all the overly PC people make this face whenever they hear a disabled person make a self-deprecating joke after they just went on a 500 tweet warpath online. Now naturally, PC Principal goes straight towards attempting to censor Jimmy's school paper. Jimmy refuses this, and PC Principal tells him that it can't be distributed on school grounds. So what does Jimmy do? Well, he starts his own paper route to deliver it outside of school, and the first story he writes...
Suck my dick, PC Principal!
Love it. This sends all the PC bros into a frenzy. While the frat bros devise a plan, Butter's dad has a mini panic attack when he realizes that ads are slowly ruining society. Now back at school, PC Principal brings in Nathan to beat Jimmy at his own game. The kicker is that Nathan is playing it up for PC Principal, but has been secretly taking money from major ad companies to help them overthrow society. But that's a different story for another time. There's a B-plot to this episode involving Garrison doing rallies and debates, but to avoid any politics so close to the election, I'm gonna skip over the Mr. Garrison and Hillary stuff, because if it's one thing we don't need right now, it's a full-on political war down in the comments. Back to super PC-ness. The cripples are invited to the PC frat house to show them what values they truly hold, only for the kids to be dismissed while the bros try to crush some puss, which is then covered in Jimmy's newspaper the following morning. Because Jimmy's newspaper is blowing up, ad companies start reaching out to him to start incorporating sponsored content, only for Officer Barbrady to come in and save the day. There is this fantastic monologue with Sharon in here as well that almost perfectly sums up keyboard social justice warriors, and I think most people agree with the sentiment she shares.
All I know is that you've changed. Ever since you joined this PC thing, you just bully people and wait for people to say anything improper so that you can jump down their throats for whatever words he or she used.
And she goes through all of this only for Randy to call her a bigot and move on like nothing happened. Anyway, the end of the episode ramps up with a cliffhanger. A few news reporters bring in Jimmy to identify sponsored content, and he passes with a perfect score. It's here where they bring in Leslie, one of Jimmy's classmates, for him to interview, only for Jimmy to realize that Leslie herself is an ad. Dun dun dun! The worst episode of Season 19 is the city part of town, with a 7.6 out of 10. The episode opens up with Jimmy Fallon ripping on South Park for an entire monologue, just absolutely roasting the town for Mr. Garrison's approach to the presidential stage. And who better to fix this image problem than Randy Marsh? He's been PC for almost 2 weeks now, and he's got a plan. A Whole Foods would force the US to take South Park seriously as a town. But first, they need to impress the reps sent to determine if South Park is worthy enough for a Whole Foods. So what do? Well, they gentrify the poorest area in town, Kenny's house. Now, because of this, places like City Walk begin to suffer financially, having to turn to child labor to stay afloat. Obviously, it doesn't look great for a town when they've got a restaurant employing children to come work for pennies on the dollar, while the Whole Foods rep is there. So the townsfolk head over to deal with the situation, leading to an all-out brawl in the streets. But as it turns out, the Rip is impressed with the amount of effort the town has gone through to give the impression that they're well adjusted, so he approves their Whole Foods. I was honestly pretty shocked to find out that this was the lowest rated episode. I thought it was pretty good, all things considered. It's got a ton of callback characters in it, and the idea of a bunch of kids getting into a fist fight with the townsfolk over a Whole Foods is hilarious to me. But the scores don't lie, I guess. Now, my personal favorite episode of the season was Safe Space. Mainly because it calls out all the fake shit that goes on with people who abuse the idea that they have anxiety. That, and it makes fun of actors like Steven Seagal, who is a real-life cartoon character. Cartman's upset because he's getting bullied for shit that he posts online. Spoiler alert, if you're fat and post a picture of yourself online saying you look ripped, people are gonna naturally disagree with it. Instead of giving Eric a basic lesson on oversharing online, he tasks Butters with filtering out any negative comments from Eric's social media feeds. This continues to scale as fat models, Selena Gomez, and others come to PC Principal with the same issue, who just dumps it all onto Butters, who has to sift through all the vile and hateful comments, distill everything down to just the positives, and then give those to everyone, which very quickly starts to take a toll on him. While all of that's going on, Randy is shamed at Whole Foods for not donating to help hungry kids around the world. This is probably my favorite B-plot in this era of South Park, because every time Randy goes to the Whole Foods, which for some reason is every day, he has to go through this one cashier who keeps hurling passive-aggressive comments at him for not donating $1. There's even a scene where he's got to pull food out of a cardboard kid's mouth, and it's just stuck and makes a big scene, and it always makes me laugh because the cashier just goes,
"Yeah, she's a hungry one. You gotta pull hard."
And when Randy finally caves and gives $1, he's shamed for only giving $1. It's just a constant stream of moving the goalposts and showing that no matter what you do, it'll never be enough. The town continues shaming everyone to the point where Steven Seagal is brought in as a special guest, but he's all fat and pitiful now, so it's just a bunch of kids sitting there watching some dude like practice karate with his gut hanging out. I also love here how PC Principal is talking and then crashes out when he sees Leslie.
We have the "Hey Leslie, put a fucking sock in it!"
It's just such good shock humor. This ends up breaking into a whole ass song about people's safe space, only for reality to come crashing in, calling everyone out for their victimhood. And not just in the song either, but when the town throws a whole fundraiser thing where they raise like $300 but spend $500,000 on the venue and fancy shit they don't need, he crashes that too and gives an awesome speech where everyone seemingly agrees with his point. Only for them to publicly execute him in the very next scene. You know what the rant reminds me of? When Ricky Gervais hosted the Golden Globe ceremony and just torched all of them for hours? That's like the closest comparison I could draw. Alright, my least favorite episode of season 19 has to be Naughty Ninjas. I don't really know why, either. I'm just not a fan of it. The concept is funny, and there's some really good moments in it, like the cops refusing to help because they're hosting a luau. I don't know, I just don't vibe with it for some reason. Even the beginning is hilarious though, where Officer Barbrady goes to the school with all the cops for like a code red for a student acting out in assembly, and he just like busts in and PC Principal points a laser pointer at him and he thinks it's a gun, so he shoots into the crowd and hits a minority student. Now, instead of getting put on paid leave and a promotion like any other police department would do, the mayor ends up firing Barbrady, and because of that, the police refuse to help with any town-related issues, like all the drug addicts hanging out around historic Kenny's house. The boys are all playing ninjas, but the townsfolk think they're terrorists because they kinda look like the monkey bar guys. And when the normal police won't do anything about it, Officer Barbrady gets called in to deal with the situation, but ends up shooting one of the kids after Randy tackles him. Not wanting to take any accountability, the mayor and reps blame Barbrady again. Now, the episode ends with the mayor allowing the police to beat the homeless again to clear them out of Whole Foods because it was bothering the townsfolk. I think maybe that's why I don't like it. It's just Officer Barbrady getting blamed for everything. I don't know, it's just an episode I don't gel with. I'm not gonna keep reading too much into it. I'm gonna cover season 20 a bit differently here and do personal favorites first, and then go into the highest rated score before covering the worst episode and my personal least favorite, mainly because I agree with the lowest rated episode here. But to me, this is where South Park starts to slowly trend downward. Don't get me wrong, there's still great episodes in every season, but the quality just feels a little less than the previous seasons. It's still a good show and funny to watch and all that, but the peak years are officially behind us with season 20. And the scores reflect that, with only 2 episodes in the entire season receiving a score higher than an 8.0. Want some proof? Like I said, we'll start with my personal favorite episode, and that is the first episode of the season, Member Berries, with a 7.8 out of 10. The entire town is gathered for the girls' volleyball game at the school, but they're not really there for the game. Instead, they're all taking bets on who's going to sit out or take a knee during the national anthem. After it wraps up, everyone just leaves, with the only players and a few fans left to watch the actual game. There's a troll actively harassing the girls at Southpark Elementary on the school's forums, and everyone thinks it's Cartman. Mainly because it sounds exactly like something Cartman would do. This continues for the entire episode, with Cartman wearing a Tokens Life Matters shirt, reading books to kids, and all the other stuff, seemingly for attention. All it's doing, though, is pissing off both the boys and the girls. See, the girls think he's the real troll, and most of the boys believe it too, thinking that he's only doing this to start a war between the boys and girls at school. While all of that's going on, the adults reach out to J.J. Abrams in an effort to rewrite the national anthem like he did for Star Wars, and he agrees. How exactly does he change things? Well, by simply adjusting the very first line before the music comes in. At the very end of the episode, it's revealed that Cartman was actually innocent this entire time, though. The real troll is none other than Gerald Bravlowski, Kyle's dad. Well, the highest rated episode in season 20 is the very next episode, episode 2, Skank Hunt, with an 8.1 out of 10. This is one of the lowest best scores so far in this entire video, and it kind of just stays that way for the remaining seasons. I'm doing this one second because it's the second episode and immediately follows the events of the Member Berries episode that was my personal favorite of the season. At this time, no one knows who the real troll is outside of the audience. Everyone still thinks it's Eric Cartman. Now, the episode kicks off with the parents being shown images that Skank Hunt is posting to the message board, which disturbs most of them. Now, Heidi Turner gets the brunt of it, with her mom being photoshopped to be gargling a massive dick, and the scene is set up to act like she's gonna kill herself. Really starting off in a dark tone here, but it's okay, she just quit Twitter and threw her phone into the water. Now, obviously, in the town of Southpark, that's worse than death, so the entire town is in a straight panic, with police taking statements of everyone in the school, kids crying, etc. It's all just really well done. I always love this part because they have Mr. Mackey, the counselor, there, and he's like, we're gonna miss her updates, and so I think the best thing to do is just tweet all of our favorite moments about her. And then he just sits there like, oh, that's nice. Oh, good one, Sarah. And they all just ignore Heidi, who's sitting in the room with them. But yeah, they all still think Skank Hunt 42 is Cartman and that it's gone too far. So what do? Well, the boys devise a plan to lure Cartman out to a cabin in the woods with promises of a LAN party. Only to smash all of his electronics, killing his social media presence. Because all of the chaos happening around the school with the trollings and all that, Scott Malkinson, the one with diabetes, keeps going to Mr. Mackey and telling him he too is going to quit Twitter. Now, Mr. Mackey is sympathetic at first, but this continues for most of the episode, and it's really funny to watch him slowly lose his patience with Scott. Like at one point, Scott calls Mackey, and Mackey's just on the phone and mutes himself, and is just like,
this fucking kid, oh my god.
And then it goes on for like 20 more seconds, and he just goes,
God damn it, just do it already.
Alright, so obviously the trolling continues because Gerald's still going hard right now, and it wasn't Cartman. But it's too late, since the boys already wrecked all of Eric's stuff. The episode ends up with all the girls officially declaring war on the boys by mass breaking up with them all, while somber music plays in the background. Well, that was depressing. Want to add insult to injury? Good, because now it's time to the worst episode of the season. Now, there was a tie here for the worst this season, between episode 7's OGs and the finale, the end of serialization as we know it, both with a 7.1 out of 10. Since there's a tie and it's my personal least favorite, I went with the end of serialization as we know it. Personally, I think season 20 is the weakest season of South Park overall. I'm not a fan of the troll storyline and the fact that it spans the entire season as a focal point for each episode. I like the twist of it being Gerald, but honestly they could have wrapped that as a B-plot in like 3 episodes. It's not something that needed a full season, and to go super in depth like this, especially since it kind of loses steam with each installment. Troll Trace is going live soon, and the troll group led by Gerald have all been captured in Denmark. It's worldwide chaos as each country calls all of their allies and rivals to try to form pacts to not look up what they're all saying about each other because it would spark nuclear war, and all the while, people are lining up to try and get to Mars to escape the shit show going on in the world. The master plan, so to speak, is for Troll Trace Group to troll the world leaders to the point where they end the world for some reason. But luckily, Gerald is able to save the day by killing the dude as the building explodes around him. There isn't much else to be said. I don't think there's many funny moments in it personally, but that's also because I don't really enjoy the whole setup, but I've already talked about that. Let's just move on to next season. Remember the highest rated episode of Season 20 was an 8.1? Well, Season 21 lowers the bar a bit further here, with the best episode coming in at a flat 8.0. The main premise of the episode is simple. Garrison keeps troll tweeting North Korea, and Tweak becomes increasingly panicked at the thought that North Korea might invade. This is one of those episodes that was a perfect product for its time, though. You've got the whole tweet debacle, Craig trying to calm Tweak down with fidget spinners, and above all else, Cartman impersonating Logic with his anti-suicide song and routine. Though it ultimately just becomes about him seeking attention rather than actually spreading the message the song is about.
I am going to kill myself unless you all start taking it seriously.
My favorite part of this episode is that in order for Cartman's campaign to actually work, he has to take away the activism around texting and driving, or rather just being attentive while driving. And as he continues to take away from that in favor of gaining more attention, people start going on their phones more and just flat out running over kids. This just builds throughout the episode too, to the point where Craig takes Tweak to an amusement park and the parents are like going on bumper cars and running kids over. It's wild shit. There's also a not so tiny Easter egg here where one of the kids that's killed is one of the White's children, which is important because that's what leads them to adopt a kid with the whole Mexican Joker arc in later seasons. But yeah, that's basically the plot. There's a pretty funny moment where Tweak tries to resolve the tension by baking cupcakes for Kim Jong-un, and then Garrison tweets out,
I know that kid, Tweak. He's fucking with you, North Korea. Get a clue. I'll bet he took a dump in the batter.
Alright, on to the worst. And that would be white people renovating houses with a 6.8 out of 10. Another one that I thought was pretty hilarious, so it was a bit shocking to see that it was the lowest, but fuck it, let's talk about it. Amazon Alexas are taking over and ruining hard-working blue-collar men's jobs, and don't worry, they protest. But while they're protesting, Randy and Sharon are busy starting their own renovation TV show where they renovate shitty houses to give them more of an open concept. That, and Randy practices MMA in his spare time. I always love that he adds that for some reason. But this episode's loaded with some pretty hilarious moments, like how the truckers and coal miners end up filling in for the Alexas and doing their job, and one of them plays Humble by Kendrick Lamar.
Playing Humble by Kendrick Lamar. I remember syrup sandwiches and crime allowances.
It's also that episode where Randy sues them for damages to his show because their protesting interferes with it, and then they just wave the Confederate flag for everything in the courtroom. So, as it turns out, the leader of the group, Daryl, is actually just kind of projecting his anger because he can't renovate his own house due to a load-bearing wall. That is, until Randy formulates a plan to fix the issue, and is able to successfully, fully redesign Daryl's house to a more modern, millennial-styled layout, which is even funnier when you consider the fact that it's still got all of his Confederate flags and guns and shit, but now they're just decoratively placed next to a tiny Zen garden. My personal favorite episode this season is episode 3, the holiday special. Remember back in 2013 when everyone was super stoked on Columbus? So does Randy. But it's not 2013 anymore, it's 2017 now, at least at the time this episode came out, which means we're in the midst of the tear down the statues era, and who better to lead the charge than the one and only Randy Marsh. This also has ramifications for the boys as well, as the growing hatred for the old CC man fucks with their ability to get a day off of school for Columbus Day. But Randy's having a blast, he's ripping statues down, it's all good shit. He just forgot one thing. There are still pictures of him wearing a Christopher Columbus costume from years ago because he used to borderline worship the man. His only saving grace is to be like 1% Native American or something, so he takes a DNA test to prove it. But there's another twist here. Because it's Randy, and he's got to do Randy things, He finds a Native American and makes out with him before he does the swab so that his test will come back skewed. This obviously backfires, and the Native American becomes obsessed with Randy, almost bordering on stalking the dude. He just shows up at his house with flowers and chocolates and all this, as Randy keeps trying to hide it from his family as if it was an affair he had. It's so over the top and stupid. I love it. The guy even writes a song for him, and it's just one of those chants.
And then he kissed me.
So as it turns out, making out with a random stranger does not transmit their DNA into a test, so they don't find any trace of Native American in Randy's DNA. But they do find that he's about 2.8% Neanderthal, making him 2.8% victim compared to a modern man. So do with that info what you will. My least favorite episode of season 21 is episode 8, Moss Piglets. To be honest, I don't really have much of a negative opinion on this season. This was just the weakest episode to me. It's almost time for the Spec Ed's science fair at Southpark Elementary, and while Nathan and Mimsy are going with the tried and true vinegar and baking soda volcano, Timmy and Jimmy are going with a different approach. Water bears. What are water bears?
They're one of nature's most resilient animals. Studies have shown they can survive lava and even the vacuum of space.
My favorite part is that they just respond best to Taylor Swift music for some reason, and when Timmy turns it on, all the water bears start dancing. Seeing this, Nathan and Mimsy tried to kill the water bears by sneaking in during the night and electrocuting them, but this backfires, and the water bears are now even smarter and are starting to display social advancements. What kind of social advancements, you might ask?
Put your right foot in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around.
You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Things are going smoothly for the boys, and they even garnered the attention of the NFL owners, including Jerry Jones, whose eyes are too far apart, to replace the declining viewership of their fans. Basically, they're looking for a way to turn water bears into NFL fans to load their pockets with even more cash. Initially, this works out exactly as the owners hoped, achieving a record sellout crowd at the Bills-Chargers game of 17 million in attendance. Jerry Jones continues pushing for more advancements, offering the Water Bears a FedEx box with team merch like jerseys, foam fingers, and hats, all of which the Water Bears accept. The B-plot for this episode catalogs Heidi's decline as she starts turning into the Cartman version of her. She's getting fat, she's got bad acne because she's not taking care of herself, and she's eating chicken nuggets and other high-processed food instead of her typical vegan diet. I do really love how they add little Cartman mannerisms to Heidi throughout this episode, and really the season as a whole. There's a good moment where she sits down at the lunch table with her friends, and she just mocks them for being concerned about her, and she sounds just like Cartman here.
Hey, Heidi. I'm just trying to enjoy my lunch here. Can I do it without you guys shitting all over me?
Another good moment with Heidi is when she's told she has to judge the science fair that she volunteered to do a month ago, and she compares it to being a slave and goes on this whole tangent while waiting for the bus. It's great.
Am I being paid to judge the science fair? No. Do I have a choice? No. Oh, yes, massa. Let me judge that science fair for you, sir.
So after all of her attempts to cancel the science fair fall through, Heidi kidnaps the water bears, holding them hostage in front of everyone. And just when it seems like she's gonna do the right thing and give them back,
Screw all you guys.
the best part of this episode to me, though, is the ending. With no water bears, Jerry Jones returns to Roger Goodell to show them what he believes can be the future for the league. And then it pans out to show him doing the vinegar and baking soda volcano that Nathan and Mimsy created, and they're all just super impressed with it, and it makes me laugh every time. The best episode of season 22 is the first one, Dead Kids, with an 8 out of 10 on IMDb. This is also my personal favorite, and not just mine, but my wife's as well, which I thought was worth mentioning. It's no secret that school shootings are one of America's more infamous pastimes, and Southpark Elementary is no exception. I do love how, while the school's getting shut up, the classes are still just going on as normal, like this happens all the time, because it does happen all the time. The kids are completely unfazed as they're just wheeling bodies out of the school. Like, all they're concerned about is retaking the math test on Friday, with Cartman upset that he copied Tolkien and still failed the test while Tolkien got an A on it. Sharon is understandably super upset with the shootings going on, leading to one of my favorite moments of the episode, where they're at dinner and Sharon's trying to get Stan to talk about it, and Randy's clueless, and when Randy finally finds out what happened, he just goes,
Who shot up the school? Was it you?
And then immediately pivots to,
Well, what's this about failing a math quiz?
and it gets me every time. Sharon crashes out over it, and Randy chalks it up to the fact that she's on her period. I don't care what anyone says. This is an argument every couple has had at least once in their relationship. It's so perfect. I love it. Sharon tries to take matters into her own hands by talking to all the parents, but she's the only one who really seems to care. Again, more great Randy moments where he's trying to tell everyone that she's on her period without her noticing. Fast forward to the next day, and they've got armed safety patrol at the school now. Not security guards, like it's literally just Butters with an assault rifle walking the hallways. After consulting with his friends, Randy heads back to the school after another shooting to talk to a doctor about menopause, thinking that's what Sharon may be going through that's sparking all this outrage. This entire episode is just loaded with Randy clips like this though, where he spends most of his time trying to tell everyone his wife is either on her period or going through menopause in a charade-styled event, and it always ends with Sharon either almost catching him or flat out catching him. And while that's funny in and of itself, it's even funnier to me to watch the people like the therapist essentially play a guessing game trying to figure out what Randy's acting out. In an attempt to regain her love, Randy, and I cannot make this up, stages a school shooting to get Sharon to the school, only to reveal to her that it was a ploy so that he could serenade her in a romantic gesture. This works about as well as you'd expect it to work, and she snaps, losing it on everyone and painting Randy as a true victim. Then, at the end of the episode, she goes back to Randy to apologize because she's on her period. But during this time, it's revealed that Stan was shot in yet another mass shooting. But this is where things change, because she decides to wait instead of freaking out. Go Sharon. Just a classic South Park episode through and through, and one of my favorites of the later seasons. There's a whole subplot with Cartman doing some investigative journalism to find out that Tolkien saw but actually hated Black Panther, and then he uses that as leverage so that he can continue to cheat off Tolkien on the math test. It's just great, all around a good episode. And just 2 episodes later, we get the worst ranked of the season, The Problem with Apu. It's the famed Mr. Hanky is actually Roseanne episode and follows the timeline pretty accurately. Basically, there's a massive Christmas celebration coming up, or the revival of the much anticipated Roseanne show, and everyone's favorite household character, Mr. Hanky, is in charge of setting it up. There's just one problem. He has trouble sleeping one night and takes some Ambien, launching him into a full-on Twitter tirade. This continues for a few days with the tweets getting more and more aggressive, and with the excuse of him taking Ambien every single time. This ends up getting him fired from the city council. Now he tries to sue Ambien, but no lawyers want to take him on because he's literal shit, and just generally kind of a shitty person. See what I did there? I'll see myself out. With nowhere left to turn, Mr. Hanky convinces Kyle to support him since he's the son of a lawyer, and Kyle agrees, mainly because he remembers the person Mr. Hanky used to be way back from the earlier seasons. Kyle tries to represent him in court, only for it to be revealed that he's been tweeting more crazy shit. He's also just a general nuisance in the courtroom, losing the support of anyone left who could have still supported him, except Kyle. He agrees to help Mr. Hanky throw his own Christmas festival, and initially, it's a pretty big success. Until the PC babies show up, which sends Mr. Hanky into a full-on shitstorm. The best part is the follow-up where Kyle's walking back through the town all defeated and covered in shit, and he's walking past people and they just hit him with the,
Mommy, something stinks.
Yeah, like shit.
At the end of the episode, even Kyle has given up hope on Mr. Hanky. The town banishes him from Southpark and he's sent off in a poober, which is just a lift. And with that, Mr. Hanky rides off to Springfield to join the Simpsons, where hate and racism is still allowed, according to Southpark. The B-plot for this episode involves Vice Principal Strongwoman giving birth to quintuplets. Don't worry, they're all super PC babies, with about half of them wearing Oakleys assigned at birth. There's a good scene here where a male nurse walks in with a Speedy Gonzales shirt, and all the babies immediately freak out and start pointing at him. And outside of that, it's really just the two of them trying to hide their relationship while dealing with quintuplet super PC babies, which is just funny to watch. All of the interactions they have are things that you'll most likely experience as a new parent. You've got the weird old ladies coming up to you at the grocery store and getting in your kid's face, the inability to do anything without one of them breaking down in tears, but all of that's amplified by the fact that they're super PC and are constantly on the lookout for things that need to be corrected, like the ethnic food aisle. Originally, I was going to use the bike parade as my least favorite episode of the season, but after rewatching it again for this video, I changed my mind and went with the problem with Apu as well. Mainly because I don't know what I was thinking with the bike parade. It's probably one of the funnier episodes in the entire season. I'm not saying something, considering I thought season 22 was pretty funny overall. We're about to get really into Tegrity Farms for the next few seasons now. Season 23 is where South Park really leans into making Randy a more prominent character than he already has been in the show, essentially making him a focal point for multiple seasons with a large emphasis on Tegrity Farms. Now, I'm gonna kind of skate around this episode because I'm not 100% confident on how YouTube views drug use and pack-muling narcotics, but the premise of the episode is Randy realizes how big China is and heads on over to try to sell his Tegrity supplies to a new consumer, only to be arrested as soon as he gets off the plane. Now, the plane ride itself is hilarious because it's basically calling out all these companies and sports teams who are selling out to get some of that sweet, sweet China money. You've got NBA teams, the Avengers, Google reps, fucking stormtroopers, and Snow White. It's great. Anyway, Randy ends up in prison with Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, and this is the reason South Park is now, as the title says, banned in China. Because Trey Parker and Matt Stone rip into the Chinese president throughout the rest of this episode, comparing him to Winnie the Pooh and other hilarious shit, which, in an absolute shocker, did not go over well with the Chinese audience. It also just takes some massive balls to do something like this, but these are the guys who wanted to show Muhammad's face on national TV after receiving bomb threats and all that fun stuff, so it's pretty par for the course if you think about it. Now, Mickey Mouse finds out Randy's been bad-mouthing the Chinese government, but ends up getting super high with him, and everything kinda works out. Until season 24, that is. Now, Randy ends up killing Winnie the Pooh, which gets his product approved by China, causing dump trucks to start unloading cash in his front yard. I always love the ending here too, because they're just eating breakfast and Randy's covered in blood, and Stan is just like,
Dad, did you kill Winnie the Pooh?
The whole time that Randy's doing his thing in China, Stan and his friends form a metal band, but spend most of their time working on their biopic and trying to also leech money from the Chinese. This ends up going overboard with Chinese officials literally watching them write their stories and song lyrics and correcting them, kind of ruining the whole point of the band in the first place. They decide to take a more vanilla and cheesy approach and bring back the Finger Bang song from their boy band arc back in season 4. On to the worst rated episode of season 23, which also happens to be my least favorite episode as well. Tegrity Farms Halloween Special, with a 7.1 out of 10. Honestly, I thought it was going to be the Let Them Eat Goo one, but no, it's the Acid Trip Halloween Special. Randy's launching a little Halloween special for Tegrity Farms, hence the title, but Shelly isn't on board with it. Actually, she's completely against not only the special, but marijuana in general, mainly due to Randy's obsession with it. To get back at him, she tries to sabotage his weed with a concoction of furniture polish, paint thinner, ammonia, bleach, antifreeze, and whatever else she can get her hands on. But instead of killing the plants, this just kind of mutates them, giving everyone a severe acid trip if they smoke it. Once Randy and Tally are super high, they start hallucinating shit like Winnie the Pooh, who he killed a few episodes ago, and even Harvey Weinstein, which was hilarious to me. They also end up shooting all the cows thinking that they're saving the day, and while all that's going on, Butters has his own issues to deal with. While he was exploring an Egyptian exhibit at the museum, he brings a mummy to life accidentally. Mummy becomes super attached to Butters and ends up being really over-the-top passive-aggressive towards him, but no one believes that it's happening to Butters or directly takes the mummy's side and blames Butters for what's happening. Now, rewatching this episode, I can see why it's the lowest rated. The whole Butters mummy plot is just kinda stupid to me. And again, this episode still follows the trend that was set way back at the very beginning of this video, where the four main boys, Stan, Cartman, Kenny, and Kyle, aren't the focal point or really even mentioned in this episode. And anytime that happens, those episodes tend to be the lowest rated of the season. My favorite episode of the season is episode 7, Bored Girls, because it does what South Park has always been the king at. It tackles a pretty sensitive topic in a hilarious manner. The whole episode centers around transgender athletes being able to compete in opposite gender sporting events, which you can see with Vice Principal Strongwoman. It's also distilled down to the elementary level. literally, with the girls wanting to join the boys' board game group, which has always been exclusively a boys' club until the school intervenes and says that the girls can join if they want to. A Vice Principal Strongwoman is competing in the Strongwoman competition. There's only one massive problem. Fucking Macho Man Randy Savage identifies as Heather Swanson shows up and just decimates the competition. And listen, I do not give a single fuck about your personal opinion on the matter. This is fucking hilarious. They put Macho Man Randy Savage in South Park and made him a woman. Anyway, he blows through the competition because, I mean, it's Macho Man Randy Savage. Do I need to keep repeating that? This forces a huge dilemma with PC Principal, who has to navigate this giant mindfuck of supporting transgendered people while also coming to grips with the issues that present in modern sports. It doesn't help that Heather Swanson keeps bragging about it to both Strongwoman and PC Principal, but that just kind of keeps pushing the story along as it keeps pissing off PC Principal. Let's put a pin in that story for a second though, because we need to go back to the board game club. Like I said at the beginning, the girls keep trying to join the boys' club, Dice Studs, which pisses the boys off. Not particularly because they're chicks though, but because they just straight up beat them at every single game they play. Even in like D&D, they have insanely strong characters, and they even end up killing Eric, who's the dungeon master. But yeah, basically the entire episode is them showing up and outclassing the boys in literally every single game they try to play. They have their own characters, game kits, model pieces, you name it, they have it. And you best believe it's better than what the boys have. This pisses off the boys enough to where they go to the government and lobby to get the girls removed from Dice Studs, and it's just hilarious to listen to. Cartman brings up how girls do their homework that night, whereas boys procrastinate, and how that applies to board games where they already have a strategy on how to win before the game even starts. They really pull out all the stops here, bringing in Scott Malkinson, who has diabetes, to give his testimony about how Dice Studs is his only shot at happiness. They end up winning this, and the girls are forcibly removed from the club, separating them into just boys clubs and girls clubs. In retaliation of this, the girls start their own board game club, Board Girls, and when the boys go to make fun of it, they find it absolutely loaded with people, decorations, board game tables. It looks like the goddamn Scholastic Book Fair had a baby with TCG Card Simulator. And you know what? The nerd in me would 100% pop in there and have a fucking blast. It's only when the boys try to join that they're told by Mr. Mackey that no boys are allowed to join the girls' school clubs, which is a rule they literally just fought to pass, effectively shooting themselves in the foot. To join both stories together, PC Principal and Vice Principal Strongwoman kind of give up and have Heather Swanson come speak at the school, which pisses the girls off, and in turn, this is how they beat Heather Swanson, seeing as all they have to do is attack her weakness, which is to have her lose to a girl, because that's what she's absolutely terrified of. So they kind of coax Heather Swanson into competing against the Board Girls Club in a series of board games where naturally they kick the dick off of her. It's a happy ending, and there's a little PC speech at the end that wraps everything up, but I'm sure if I post it, I'll get at least a few neckbeards in the comments whining about it, so onward we go. Now, season 24 has one installment, and it's the Pandemic Special, which I'm going to cover in another video, so be on the lookout for that. I don't know when it'll be out, but an optimistic estimate would be sometime like January or February 2025. But yeah, let's just go to season 25. Now, I agree with both the best and worst episodes of season 25 here, with the best being The Big Fix, and judging by the scores, this was most of your favorites as well. It's got an 8 out of 10 on IMDB, and for good reason. The episode takes over 20 years of build-up, and just gaslights the fans by saying it never existed, and it's fucking hilarious. Honestly, this isn't all anyone really talks about in this episode, so I'm gonna spend most of my time talking about it, because it's actually insane what they did, and it's really funny. So, Token Black. You know, the Token Black character of South Park with the purple shirt and the yellow tee on it. That Token Black? Well, his name is actually Tolkien Black, named after famous author J.R.R. Tolkien, the dude who wrote The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And much like the audience, Stan's head fucking explodes when he hears this, and he spends the rest of the episode trying to cope with the fact that he's kinda a little racist maybe? But that's not even the most impactful part of the episode. It's what the creators of South Park did following this episode that was just chef's kiss. They went back on all streaming services and recaptioned Token to say Tolkien for everything in all the captions. All previous episodes now refer to Token Black as Tolkien Black, effectively gaslighting the audience to be like, you guys really thought he was Token Black this whole time? That's racist. Now, obviously it wasn't always Tolkien, and that was in fact Token Black, and you can tell that if you have any of the DVD releases, and there's even a few episodes where his name is written out and it says Token on it. Like the episode where Cartman gets all of his electronics destroyed, he's wearing a shirt that says Token's Life Matters. But the fact that they went back through hundreds of episodes and swapped that out just for a meme makes it worthy of being the sole talking point of the episode. The worst of the season 25 is Back to the Cold War with a 6.6 out of 10. If I can be frank, this episode is fucking stupid. Like, really. It's a Butters-centric one, which still follows the trend that I've been talking about for hours now, and it's all about how he needs to be better at riding a horse than some kid's Russian horse. The problem? Well, Butters' horse is super undisciplined and just walks through the obstacles, shits all over the course, and loves to whip out his massive horse schlong. The parents take this super seriously because it's a return to the Cold War. There's a whole side story with Mr. Mackey that's got its moments, but most of them are just plain stupid for the sake of feeling like an 80s propaganda-themed episode. The best part of this episode for me was when Mackey goes back to his mom's house and is in his room and he's got this bad boy. That's right, he breaks out the floppy disk with the dial-up internet, if I can say so, and hacks into the Colorado military base trying to tell everyone that the Russians are nuking everyone when they're not. Seriously though, some high-level hacks going on with this. I'm not gonna show it because I'm like 40% sure this will get the video flagged, but the episode ends with Butters' horse mating with the Russian horse, and the crowd gets super into it because it's the metaphorical America fucking communism, which is funny, but I don't think I can show it. My personal favorite episode of season 25 is episode 5's Help My Teenager Hates Me. Mainly because, when I was a teenager, all I ever wanted to do was go airsofting. Me and my buddies would go to this place like 15 minutes away called Black Ops Airsoft almost every single weekend from open to close, and we would play all fucking day. There were some of my all-time favorite memories from those years, and this episode was a huge nostalgia kick for me because I've been through all of the phases. I was a kid with a spring-loaded pistol. Then I grew into a teenager with an AK-47 and an M4 fully auto rifle, and now I'm an adult who will inevitably answer the call and head back into the fray with my minigun and grenade launchers now that I can afford more than $100 worth of airsoft guns. But enough about me, let's talk about the episode. The boys want to go airsofting, but since they're kids, they need to have a battle buddy, i.e., they need to be partnered with one of the teenagers there to play alongside of. Naturally, the teenagers hate that idea, but the boys love it and all kind of adopt the teenagers as their own kids in a way. Like, they take on this pseudo-parenting role over them, which is really funny because the teenagers have their own little mood swings or are spending all of their time in the bathroom stockpiling lotion. You know. Now, teenagers being teenagers, they'd rather smoke weed, jacket, or just have mood swings rather than go airsofting on the weekends, and certainly don't want to spend any of that time with 4th graders. Eventually, they end up rejecting the boys entirely, meaning the kids can't go airsofting anymore. That is, until the dads unite in an effort to spend more time with their kids and roll up just fucking kitted out. There's a little sad moment where Eric feels left out because he doesn't have a dad, only for Stan's Uncle Jimbo to roll up looking like a goddamn juggernaut, and together, the boys and their parents just decimate the teenagers. Randy baits them with a jar of Tegrity weed and launches a nade directly on top of them. Jimbo's got the minigun just shredding people until they quit. And when they can't find the last player, Eric opens up the porta potty to find his old battle buddy hunched over his phone, pants around his ankles, and just lights the kid up. It's a great episode, both in how funny it is and the story along with it. At its core, I think this is everything the average teenage boy wants when it comes to paintball or airsoft, and anyone who's ever played can relate to every stereotype they showcase. From the annoying little kids running around with their shitty guns, the teenagers who get super butthurt over everything, to the adults who get way too into it because they have adult money and bring out the heavy weaponry that no one can compete with. And I love it all. I wanted to say it with season 25, but there's no denying it with season 26. This whole season feels like a true return to South Park. There's still an absolute stinker in here, but there's some genuinely hilarious episodes in this season, even if it was a short one with only 6 episodes. The Worldwide Privacy Tour has the high score here with an 8.3 out of 10. I don't think that should be a shock to anyone. It's almost like a throwback episode to bullying popular celebrities at the time. The episode targets Prince Harry and his wife as they embark on a worldwide tour, telling everyone to respect their privacy. It's a clear parody of how they made a huge scene with leaving the royal family and talked about how they just wanted to live a quiet and private life, only to go on every talk show they could find and write all these books and make tons of public appearances, just to tell people they don't want the limelight. Now naturally, the best place for this Canadian couple to escape is South Park. They end up moving in as Kyle's neighbors and disrupt his life by doing shit like setting up a drum set outside and playing it all night so Kyle can't sleep or play video games with his friends, which is a massive issue considering the new Warhammer 40k game just dropped and all of his other friends have that sweet drip while he doesn't. To really hammer the point home, Kyle seeks out a brand management company to rebuild his image, and every single prompt he gets ends with victim, implying that the best way to garner any popularity or public goodwill is to simply become a victim. I wonder if that's ever worked out for anyone. Things all come to a head when the couple finds themselves in the same brand management company, but when Prince tries to leave, his wife stays with the company, implying that she only wants the spotlight and doesn't really want a quiet life, whereas Prince Harry actually kinda does come around to this and he wants to live his life without the focus being always on him. Oh, and the Queen's still dead. The episode ends with all the boys coming together to play some basketball with Kyle because they feel like he could just use a break from all this stuff and dealing with the prince, so yeah, they have him go play basketball. And as they're doing it, Prince Harry rolls up. But instead of being a dick, he just asks if he can play with them, only to bring his drum set over to the court and play his drums in peace while the boys play their game alongside of him. Spring Break is the weakest link in this season, and boy is it weak. Mainly because, by this point, I think most South Park fans were kinda over the Mr. Garrison as Trump thing, and were hoping to return back to a more normal version of South Park. And honestly, most of this shortened season feels like a return to those seasons 9 through 18 episodes, except for this one. The entire episode centers around Mr. Garrison and his new boyfriend Rick, while they deal with Garrison's urge to rally. Now during spring break, Mr. Garrison and Rick go on vacation to Myrtle Beach to just get away from South Park for a bit and relax. But as soon as they get there, Garrison notices a shop with all of his merch and shit on display and is immediately recognized by a ton of people. He starts sneaking out to go check out the store and ends up staying out all night hosting a rally in the shop. Now this goes on for several days until Rick finally catches him and then heads home, leaving Garrison behind to fully engulf himself in more rallies. He ends up going a bit overboard here and uses the national stage to apologize, starting an I love Rick chant that inevitably also goes overboard and sparks a second insurrection. I do think it's funny that they use January 6 footage for this scene as well to tie the whole point together. But in the end, Mr. Garrison goes home to Rick and seemingly leaves this lifestyle in the past for good. Alright, B-plot real quick, because while all of that's going on, the B-plot is arguably better than the main story. It's spring break, we already have established that, but while Randy thinks that means massive parties and crazy shit like the college days, Stan and Tolkien want to just hang out at the house and pull off a massive Warhammer bender. Randy can't fathom that they'd rather do that than look at boobs, so he throws his own massive party with guest appearances from the Romanian sex trafficker. It's a good time. Alright, time for the last episode of the video. My personal favorite of this season, episode 5's Dick and Balls Hot Dogs. Butters has a job working at an ice cream shop. Cartman gets super jealous when he sees that Butters gets paid for that, and naturally this results in Cartman going to work at the ice cream shop. But he doesn't really work, he just ends up taking advantage of everyone and everything. He doesn't even make it through a full day, saying he's going to work from home, which is great when you consider the fact that, it's an ice cream shop. After one full day of work, Cartman decides to quit and start his own company at his own house, since him and his mom still live in the hot dog shop. He manipulates Butters into investing in the company, which was really just a way to use Butters' money to front the whole thing and make these insanely expensive renovations. But when it comes time to hire employees, Eric runs into the same issues that he was presenting at the ice cream shop. No one really wants to work. They're more concerned with mental health days and working from home and all this extra stuff that doesn't actually apply to the job of being presented. So what ends up happening is that Butters sees no one's working, gets fed up because it's all of his money at stake, and then just takes over the shop as its sole employee, making Dick and Ball's hot dogs a huge success. There's a ton of good moments, like how the hot dogs are plated to be a dick and then there's balls drawn on the plate with ketchup and mustard, and all of that as well, which is really funny to me. But the best part comes at the end. Butters does all of this market research and goes to his banker and is able to outmaneuver him by selling Dick and Balls to Eric's mom, who he's gone into business with. He then uses those profits to repurchase Eric's old house. Now this sounds like he's doing a good thing for his friend because Eric hated living in the hot dog for the entire season, but it's actually a massive fuck you to Cartman. See, he just spent thousands of dollars renovating the place, putting in these crazy water slides, rebuilding huge portions of it, and then finally reopening the place to what is now a very successful business. But since Butters is the sole investor, he rips all of that away from Eric, sending him back to his old house and destroying the one thing that Eric had any success with. It's one of the very few times in the entire South Park catalog where Butters is able to come out on top. And there you have it. The best and worst episode of each season, along with my personal opinion that no one asked for. If you haven't already, feel free to tell me why my choices are stupid and how your favorite episodes are better down in the comments. I've recently stumbled across a ton of South Park icebergs, and I'd really love to do one, so let me know if that'd be interesting to you guys. I still want to go through all the South Park movies, but at the same time, I want to get started on doing this for some other favorite shows of mine like Bob's Burgers, The Office, and American Dad, so expect those to come in the next few months here. Thank you again for watching. Remember to like and subscribe if you liked the video, and until next time, cheers.